this meeting to order with roll call, please.
Mr. Hazelhoff?
Here.
Mr. Kinzer?
Here.
Mr. Kinzer?
Here.
Mrs. Maxey? Here. Mr. Moon? Mr. Mulholland?
Here.
Mr. Rudy?
Here. The audience and the approval of the agenda. Audience and visitors first?
Approval of the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, do we have a motion to approve the agenda, and then we can modify it during discussion if we need to? Pardon?
Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh. Yeah. Told you I wasn't ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? Would anybody like to change anything on the agenda? Hearing none, roll call please, Kelly.
Mr. Hazelhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Mulholland?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
All right, and that takes us to audience to visitors, and we have none, which then is item, we don't have any, do we?
I was teasing it.
All right. Which takes us to the treasurer's report. Melissa, please.
It's as presented. I apologize for the late upload. It's just the shorter one this month.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions concerning the treasurer's report for Melissa? All right. Mike, that leads us to you, your superintendent's report.
Yeah, I want to first start off with, this is Board Appreciation Week, so we have chocolates for you. Kind of a small token, but this is our chance to recognize and thank you guys for your time and dedication that you give the North Boone School District, and we appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
And I just got back from the Golden Apple reception, which was wonderful, caught me off guard. Suzette Muck gave the kind of the introductory encouragement speech, so she did a fabulous job. That was a great start to it. And we had 25 teachers that were nominated for Golden Apple. Tonight's kind of the kickoff that encourages teachers to run and go forward with that next step in the process. 10 from the high school, 11 from the middle school, and 4 from the upper elementary. So North Boone was very well represented there tonight. Tomorrow I will be meeting with Owen Costanza from the Poplar Grove Village. He's the president down there. It's a chance for us to catch up. One of the things I'd like to do is invite him to hopefully come to our December meeting and give a chance to talk about what's going on with developments in Poplar Grove. Want to make sure that the school district stays apart to whatever it is that they've got moving forward, so we're part of that. So I will meet with him for lunch tomorrow. Last thing that I got, we got the Triple I conferences beginning this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You should have folders and information in all of your packets there with conference details, dinner details for Friday night. And if you have any questions or there's anything that you're not sure on, please let us know. I want to make sure that your details are taken care of before we get down there so that it's as smooth as can be. So, and that is, oh, one more other thing that I got late today. The Boone County Board and Conservation District is looking to apply for a grant, Safe Pathways to School, where they're looking to put a bike path in from Poplar Grove up towards our campus up here at our 3 schools. I'll find out a little more, but what they'd like to do is give a letter of support if that is something the board feels confident they can support. I'm not sure if they need a formal resolution from us or if they just want a letter of support. I'll double check on that. But if there's any oppositions or any thoughts not to, I think it's a great idea to move forward to have a bike path that'll help kids get up to the central campus. So that's all I got.
Right. That would be nothing they'd want necessarily our input on.
It's what they're doing is they're applying for a grant. It's 100% paid for, so there's no money commitment on our part, and that's something that they're hoping to get from, I believe it's a federal grant.
Okay. Are they hoping to get like a letter from us or something?
Yeah,
like
which
that
says
showing
that is
approval?
if they were to get that grant, we would support, be able to follow through with that as well.
All right, thank you, Mike. That takes us to committee reports. Do we have anything from policy committee?
We don't have anything right now. Mike, we're going to have anything?
We'll get something shortly here. They're in the process of putting something together. We see it on the website, but not the details yet.
So maybe
It'll-
after the first of the
Probably
year?
after the first of the year.
Business services.
So we had a great presentation by Mrs. Guyman on the levy. She'll be going over it in more detail. She presented us with 3 options. We had requested a little bit more information from her that she'll share with the entire group. And then we're going to need to make a decision about which one of those options we're going to approve so that we can get the tax levy hearing scheduled in later business, right? So,
We may have grown a 4th option with an option that kind of emerged from the state that Mrs. Guyman will share with you tonight. We can
Okay.
talk about and discuss.
yep, fair enough. We also had a presentation made to us on bus leasing and purchasing. We asked Mrs. Diamond for a little bit more detail on that as well. And that she'll share that with us as well. So that we'll have both of those as items to vote on tonight.
Are there any plans for an up-and-coming meeting?
No.
Not yet? Okay. How about facilities and long-range planning?
Haven't met.
Okay. And curriculum and
Curriculum and committee, what I'd love to do is work with Brian. Brian, I forgot to let you know about your calendar. What I'd like to propose is a December 4th curriculum meeting, and I don't need your answer now if you don't have it, but where we talk about the CEC report they're going to talk to us tonight about. We'll go over some test scores, long-range tech plan. I'm hoping to be able to ramp out the initial stages right there too.
Did we get the survey back from the
Teachers?
teachers?
Yes, and we've got that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, needed, I know.
December 4th, 3:45. What I'll do is I'll have Kelly send a sample agenda that we can mark up, and you can double check the date and see if that works.
It's December 4th, a Tuesday?
Yes.
Tuesday.
Kelly's sending it to you right now.
All right.
How's that look, Brian? Not the agenda, I mean the date.
It looks fine.
Date's okay?
I'm good with that, yes.
So we'll tentatively schedule that then for December 4th, 3:45. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. That takes us to the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is that Hazelhorse?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Mulholland?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Takes us to unfinished business, and we'll be starting with the bus purchase and leasing tonight.
Yes. Melissa has received quotes for purchasing and leasing buses. I know the topic was brought up at the last business meeting, and she's brought back further information and recommendation, and so what I'll do is turn it over to Melissa if there's anything more you wanted to add at this point.
Perfect. So there is a PowerPoint that was in the uploaded packet. I presented this at the business meeting. We had some options. These quotes you guys have seen before at the board meeting. We have quotes from Midwest, from Central Sales, as well as the American Bus on here. So kind of to go through some general information. One of the things we talked about at the business service meeting was surveying the staff. We've had a lot of conversations about air brakes versus hydraulic brakes and retention of bus drivers and kind of what we need to do. So I did a voluntary survey of the bus drivers in paper form. They all got to fill it out. We had 15 surveys out of the 22 returned. After my cutoff, I got another 4 in that are not representative on the screen. It was just they were after the deadline, but I did get a few more in. 12 of our bus drivers prefer, the question was, do you prefer to drive a bus with air brakes or hydraulic brakes? 12 of our bus drivers said air brakes, 1 has said hydraulic, and then 2 said does not matter. Some of the comments that I had gotten from the bus drivers was that with the air brakes, it's not just the brakes, it's the hydraulic seats, it's the hydraulic shocks, it's the air brakes, the air seats, the air shocks in the bus. The bus just rides a little bit different than the hydraulic. So that was one of the things that they liked about the air brakes. Another question I asked was, do you feel the type of brakes impact bus driver recruitment and retention? 2 people said yes, 7 said no, and 6 says it does not matter. And then the third question I asked are, what are the roadblocks for recruitment of bus drivers? 9 people said benefits. That was a big thing, the health insurance. A couple people said part-time. 2 people said student behavior. 3 people said pay. 3 people said responsibility. And with the recent events in the news, we found that seems to be an issue with getting people into. 1 said support by district. 2 was incentives. And then 1 was competition with other school districts around us. So that was the staff input, which I thought was a great tool for us to use. So the next piece is the funding on how are we going to fund the buses. The proposal was 10 buses. We've been talking about buying 6 and leasing 4 within our budget. And you can see I had $550,000 for bus purchases in the budget. And the proposed transportation revenue was $1.4 million, and then our proposed expenses were about the same. There's a little bit of cushion there. And then our fund balance for transportation. And the fund balance, this is money that's not accounted for. So it's in our transportation fund. It's for a rainy day. It's for in case the state doesn't give us our payments or we have a major bus meltdown or something. It's kind of like our transportation savings.
Surplus.
Surplus, yeah. So it's that $1.5 million. So what I got from the business services meeting was how can we fund these buses if we don't want to lease? What are some other ways? What can we do? So one thing we can do is increase the levy amount for transportation fund, but this would decrease a different fund. So we wouldn't get more money overall. We would just moving money between funds. So it's an option, but then somewhere else it's going to lose out. Another option would be that we can set money aside from that fund balance. So I talked about that $1.5 million that's in our transportation fund balance. Instead of leasing the buses, we could potentially just take that extra money that's not going to come in revenue this year and take it out of that fund balance to purchase our buses. And then the third option we could do is we could purchase and lease buses like we originally talked about, was leasing those 4 and then purchasing. The next slide kind of shows if we do purchase, the first line is Midwest. If we do the 6 air and 4 hydraulic brakes, the total purchase price would be the $778,000. Our budget allocation is that $550,000. We would essentially have to take about $228,000 out of our fund balance, which would leave us the $1.3 million in our fund balance. And I did the same for Midwest with the air brakes, and then Central Sales with the air brakes. Central Sales is a Bluebird company, and they also are quoting us brand new buses. So that's the difference that you'll see there in the price. The lease options, Midwest had quoted us a lease option. At the time when they gave us the quote, the interest rate was at 4.3% for 3 years. They said that since then that interest rate has increased, but they were willing to eat or honor that 4.3% they had originally quoted us on those. So the lease price for a year is about $12,700. The other Central Sales, which was the Bluebird company, they also gave us a lease option for their buses at 5.2% for a 3-year lease at $14,000. I did contact Poplar Grove State Bank. They're still working on getting us those interest rates back, so I apologize I did not have those. But that's an option. They said that they could work with us too on that. So kind of looking, so a few more updates. Midwest with the SBAR heaters, if we chose to purchase from Midwest, they said that they could cover those SBAR heaters, which are the heaters that go on the engines that help keep everything warm and moving. The entire cost of the heater's installation. So just like Mr. Wilhunt had talked about, the business committee, it's that anti-idling kind of a thing. They want buses not to idle so much. And so it's a grant that we would work through that. And then mileage on the Midwest bus, that was another question that came up, was between $12,000 and $15,000. They're all 1-year lease buses that are coming back for the air brake and the hydraulic brakes. So they'll have somewhere under that $12,000 to $15,000 range. Any questions? Buses.
Those 10 buses are available immediately, right?
There's the hydraulic brakes or the hydraulic brake buses, the 71, 72, those are available immediately. They're on the lot. The air brake buses would not be available until the summer. So my recommendation would be to purchase all of our buses. I don't think I think saving the money from the interest rate, since we have that fund balance, is probably in our best interest at this point. But I would also say that if we purchase 4 of the hydraulics, so we can get them in the next month or so, and then buying 6 air brakes that we can get this summer. So it kind of alleviates some of our bus issues now, but then we've got some newer buses with air brakes coming.
And then would we be turning around and getting another proposal in March for potentially 10 more?
Kind of what I'm thinking of the time, so you guys know for the future, is maybe next September, October, we'll start with the business committee, and I'll bring back what are our needs and what do we want to do with buses. Then we'll get quotes next November, and then our buses will come that following summer. So we've almost missed a year because we're a little bit later with the proposals. I'd like to be able to continue to bid buses at this time of year, just because they know the leases that are coming back, but knowing that we probably won't get them until that summer after.
We do have a few buses right now, and I can think of 3 that they're running, they're fine, they're safe, but we know they need work done.
Yeah.
Some engine work, and they've got miles on them, they've got some wear.
So, this is just a question, I guess. So if we knew that we were gonna get them, or they were gonna be on next year's books anyway, wouldn't we just split them in June and July?
We could, if we wanted to say to Midwest, hey, we want all 10 of your air brakes, 6 of them are going to be on this year's books, and 4 are going to be on next year, we absolutely do
No,
that.
I was thinking 10. And then 10.
Oh, so take all of their hydraulic and all of their air? Yeah.
Well,
Or 5 and 5 or whatever, yeah.
so whatever the combination of it is, but
Yeah.
we could potentially take care of
2
flipping
years.
more than half the fleet over
Yeah.
this next summer if we chose to.
Yep, absolutely.
So one of the things that we had talked about was that what the lease, I thought the lease bought us 2 things. Obviously a lower
Yeah.
costs going into it, but I thought it also helped you to stagger the bus expirations so that we
It-
had 3 and 5 years out there that we were turning them over.
It did. Originally, our layout was for a 5-year replacement of buses.
Rotation.
We decided that we wanted to just shrink it down. What I'll do if we do decide to buy now, and this is kind of layout, this is our first year layout. If we do decide to buy, then I'll just go back and stagger it out to the 5 years. So there may be a few years where we keep our buses for 6 years, and then there's a few years we may keep them at 4, but we can eventually get it back to where at 5 years. I would not want it to end up going too long.
But what you lose after you go past 5 years is reimbursement from the state, right?
Right.
And the depreciation, that's a lot harder
Right,
too.
right, that's kind of that sweet spot, that 5 years. So the anticipation would not be to go past those 5 years. The nice thing with buying right now is that next year, that we'd have 4 buses, so there's that 12,000 there. You wouldn't have that going towards the leases, so that opens up some funds for next year's purchases as well. So there's some good and bad to both, and you're right, we did talk about leasing so that we could get more buses quicker, but when you look at lease prices, or interest rates too, that's something that we're just gonna have to decide if that's what we want to do.
So the other thing that we had was, there was that or you were gonna check the PMA on that investment, did you?
Yeah, and PMA had said that it was reinvested back into the fund, so it's in the PMA account, and they just reinvested it. And I know there was some confusion on there, they said that they couldn't, but he said that it's reinvested, it's just in all of our, and then we break it up into the fund. So that 1.5 million fund balance, that's housed in PMA with that. Now, I don't know that 700,000, I don't know what fund that was from, but he said that was reinvested in our investments.
Okay.
I know it doesn't answer your question, and I don't know the history behind that, because I know it was the bond that was sold, correct?
Yeah.
That was from the other school district.
It was a school district that we
Right.
wanted to, yeah, I'm really kind of confused about that.
Yeah, and when I called him and asked him about it, he had said that they reinvested it back into PMA, so.
I don't know what that means, because that money was
Yeah.
targeted for a certain year, pay for a future abatement.
Okay,
So when it goes back into PMA, it should have gone back into a like a
A bond. It
two-year
would've been
CD
a-
or
right.
it would have went into.
And that's what it means, yeah, it would have gone back into a CD or something in the bond fund, if that's where it was used for, was to be paying off a bond, and it's probably back in the bond fund. But I will.
Did we do that last year, or was it 2 years ago?
It's
It was right after.
right when I,
Yeah, right after we got the warrant.
Yeah.
Almost 2 then.
Okay.
And I remember the district of what it was.
Okay, and maybe I'll have you sit in.
I will.
Okay.
but I would like, even if it's separate from this conversation,
Yep, I will get.
something a little more concrete as to where, you know, that money got reinvested back
Yeah, I will get
into
that.
and what rate and things.
For the lease options.
Yeah.
I saw that they included maintenance from like Midwest quote,
Mhm.
but I didn't see it in the other quotes. Were those not including maintenance in those lease options?
For central sales, you mean?
I saw it in Midwest, I didn't look.
Yeah,
I didn't
Central
see it in
Sales
Central
did
Sales.
have a warranty,
Well, it said warranty, but not the maintenance, because
right,
that'd be a substantial difference
right.
in cost.
And what was Poplar Grove Bank? You said that were they looking at a lease for us?
Yes.
Or financing?
Please.
Okay.
He was looking at interest rates for us. They were asking about the lease. I asked them that we were looking to lease, what the interest rates were being, so they were working on that for us. They were also asking if we wanted to finance. I said we didn't want to, we wanted to lease the buses for 3 years, so they were working on that.
Okay. Have you reached out to any other leasing companies? Because the one thing is Midwest makes it clear that they're not a leasing
Right.
company,
Right.
but yet, have you talked to the leasing company for Midwest?
I did
Or
not.
you've only talked to the rate?
No, I did
Okay.
not. I just worked with Midwest because that's who they worked with.
Any other questions? Any further discussion?
I'd like to move that we purchase 10, that we take the 550,000 that we had allocated and take 200,000 out of our surplus that's in transportation to pay for the purchase of these 10 buses.
Do you have that, Kelly?
950.
No, was that all the air brakes or the
The
mixture
10
air
buses. So
hydraulic?
we could take the configuration that Melissa had proposed, but rather than leasing them, now that we know that we have some surplus sitting in transportation, just take 200,000 from that.
The first figure? The first option.
Sorry, well, I'm on a different page.
No,
so I
you're
wasn't
fine.
looking at that.
So what about the rotation schedule and things like that, going past 5 years?
We'll have next year that we can look at maybe balancing that out. You brought that up. I mean, it does make some sense to stay with potentially what Melissa's talking about. We're not going to get all the buses now anyway. We'll wait until the following summer to get the ones on next year's books so that they do stay staggered out in some kind of sequential order so that we can have a replacement schedule going forward.
For the hydraulic ones that we take delivery of now, would we get depreciation, full depreciation this year on those?
You would get it for 5 years. So, whenever you take them, it's a calendar. So when we do the transportation report next year, we would get those on that depreciation.
But even though we've only had them on for half a school year, you believe we would get the full?
That I don't know. I
Depreciation.
can find out. I do know it's 5 years. Typically, it'll say like on the report, you get, let's say, you're allotted 15,000 for that depreciation, and then every year it'll say how much you have remaining left of that depreciation. So my guess is that the first year would be prorated and the last year would be prorated because you get so much based on the amount that you paid for the buses.
Got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second from Maxie. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Mulholland?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Heatherly?
Yes. Motion passes. That brings us to the CEC audit report.
Yes. Liz Webb and Terry Carmen from the CEC are here to present to us tonight. They're going to give us the initial report. This is really the first time an audience is hearing it. They were with us October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. I appreciated you guys and all your time when you were here, and I'll turn the floor over to you guys. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for having us tonight. I'm Terry Carmen and my colleague Liz Webb. And I just want to say, too, while we were here for those 3 days, we just felt so welcome, starting from the way we were received in the district office to all the time that we spent in each of the schools, from the students, the parents, the staff. It was just a really warm and welcoming climate that we have going on here. And that might not be in our report because we were focused on the curriculum instruction and assessment, but we really want to say how much we enjoyed our time and just what a special community you have here. So we want to thank you for having us. Tonight, what we're going to do is go through our findings. Let's see if I can push that. Oh, can you put that into slide presentation mode under view? Up at the top, view, yeah, and present. Thank you. Okay, so what we want to do is go through the process that we used, the findings, some suggestions that we have for some immediate next steps, and then to have you talk about just where you're going to go from here and how to process the report and what you want to do with the results. So there were 2 other members of our team, and we were represented with many years of educational experience between all of us. Some of us have had, 35 or less years, but we had teachers and administrators on our team, and we were able to split up then and go into each of the different schools. So it was really a comprehensive process that we used, and as I said, we really enjoyed our time at the schools.
So this is the tricky part because even when we would go around, we were either called the CIA, which was interesting, or the auditors, and we really aren't either. But we are going to talk tonight about what it is to have a systematic evaluation done. And we were focusing again on the math and the pieces of curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and how it's all processed together. And, we talked with all stakeholders, teachers, administrators, students, parents, everybody we could find, and it was very organized, and we were able to have focus groups and really ask questions where we could get down to finding out a lot of good information about what math is being done and what's going on. So the next slide. Oops. Yes, what does an audit do? Actually, it's very helpful, and we've been on a lot of system analysis and assessments in different districts, but this one, again, was focusing just on the math, and we took apart the curriculum, the instruction, and the assessment pieces, and we're really looking to see how it can reveal the extent to which district and school staff have developed and implemented a sound, valid, and operational system of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. It's easier to do on the slides. The purpose of this audit is to determine that degree of alignment and the fidelity of the curriculum that's being used and implemented, what's being written, what's being taught, what's being tested and experienced. But the non-purpose of this, and we still feel this, we did when we went through it in our own buildings and also when we come out and do it to other places, it's non-evaluative. We're not there to evaluate people and say, how they're doing in their job. We're really able to focus on the 3 pieces that make this audit. Talk about the process.
So the audit actually began when we weren't even physically present or in the district. We started with the written documents that we were sent and were able to have shared with us to see what was written, what kinds of things were done in writing as compared to what's actually happening in the schools that we visited and in the classrooms that we visited. So what we were looking for is reviewing the written documents, the policies, the curriculum, the implementation, the support, the assessments that are in place, and then collecting data through self-assessment, through surveys that we had sent out, focus group interviews, classroom observations, and then actually analyzing the documents that we found on the curriculum instruction and assessment practices. And then what we did is summarize the data and then produced a final report that we are here sharing tonight. And the final report then will allow us to share with you some of the strengths that we identified and then some areas for growth, some opportunities, and then some suggested priorities that we are going to suggest to you. The focus groups that we met with were all different stakeholders in the district. So starting with the superintendent to the district administrative team, the building principals, union representatives, parents, and students. And that was a lot of fun, really meeting with each of the stakeholder groups, especially I think most one was the kindergarten and first grade students to see what they had to say. All the way up to high school students were so articulate, and we just had a lot of fun really interviewing the students, and it was a pleasure because they were, and the staff as well, everybody was so open and honest, and knowing that this was not evaluative, we really felt we got a really good picture of what was actually happening. So we could see if there were any discrepancies going on. We used a rating rubric, and that represented a continuum of progress and growth for each of the different areas that we included in the audit. And it shows a continuous improvement process. So the ultimate goal is to be down at the bottom, number 5, with that sustainability and culture piece. But it starts with an awareness level, which is back at the top at number 1. So it moves all the way up, starting with the awareness, moving to where the action or the practice is implemented systematically within the district until it becomes sustainable, where it's just supported. It almost becomes a natural process. So the idea is to look and see where districts are on this rubric, knowing that it is just continuous growth and progress. And sometimes systems have a discrepancy between what the insiders think is in place and what auditors like us from the outside see, because sometimes you're too close to the situation and you really need that bird's eye view. So that's why it's really helpful to have an audit come in, a team come in to look at it with an outside perspective.
I think it's important to note too that no school district is at 5 for every single area that we, sustainable, squeezing along.
So when we share the rating tables, you're going to see there's 2 colors that are represented on the table. The green is showing the self-assessment responses from grade level teams or from in-house district staff or people who filled out the survey. But we want to keep in mind when you're looking at the ratings from the staff on site is that 116 surveys were sent out, but only 47 were returned. So that could skew the data, and we're not sure which way it could be skewed. It could be lower or higher because we don't know. Sometimes when people fill out surveys, they feel passionate one way or the other. So we really don't know for sure, but it can affect the rating. Then when you see the blue color on the rating table, that's what the audit team saw for each of the areas. So it's hopefully as close to a full picture as we can get, but with the number of surveys that were returned, we do want to keep that in mind.
So again, we're going to look at these 3 areas where we look at, actually not CIA this time, we're going to go a little bit out of order and, so we need to be able to look at it so you have separate sections and 3 to 4 focus parts. So focus on learning for curriculum, which is what's being taught and how it's planned out. Focus on assessment. What are some of the in-house formative assessments that teachers are either making or the district's making? Where are those coming from, and how are we using those results to adjust our teaching and planning? And focus on instruction, which is one of the most important pieces. And that's where the master teachers in North Boone Schools are designing plans and adjusting them as needed for the students to learn and grow as much as they possibly can in any given year. So now we get right into, yep, I keep holding it the wrong way, not used to this one. We get right into the curriculum piece. This is focus on learning for curriculum. And there's 3 parts for this: establishing it, executing it, and clarifying, communicating the curriculum. The concept of a guaranteed and viable curriculum is premised on the need for all students to master a common set of essential skills, right? This non-negotiable answers the first critical question of a PLC, which is a professional learning community. What should each student learn? Because it defines and communicates what each student is expected to know and be able to do, this non-negotiable is foundational to a PLC. The expectation is that a guaranteed and viable curriculum is standard across the district, equally available to all students, no matter which school they go to, and tied to essential learning goals, aligned to state standards, and articulated vertically throughout the district. Without this non-negotiable piece in place, nothing connects, whether how it's taught or where it's being assessed or any of the pieces. It won't go together. So let's focus on the 3 big strengths that we found with curriculum. The district has begun the process of building a standards-based written curriculum. The district has a curriculum development plan that outlines work to be done monthly in math for each grade. As a math committee, teachers K through 12 in this district have reviewed and prioritized the Common Core standards. Some grade levels have worked on pacing guides for those and looked for overlap and gaps to determine mastery skills. There is a guidance document available for teachers to use as they continue to unpack those standards. The math committee has representation of all grade levels from all schools. So that's a very big plus. The next one is new resources have been adopted for all levels. Resources are available to teachers. The district went through a pretty great process to identify new resources that included allowing teachers an opportunity to pilot them in their classrooms, to weigh out how they felt about them, and middle and high school teachers feel the aligned resources will help streamline their student experiences, vocabulary and strategies, and so on and so forth. And then the last big strength is that the district is utilizing a curriculum repository software to guide and house the new curriculum work. It's new, it's online, people are learning how to use it, and that can be the next steps for making sure everybody knows how to get in there and use the curriculum. Districts often start the process by identifying the essential knowledge and skills of what students should know and be able to do, and align this to the standards. Many districts develop curriculum maps to develop vertical alignment between grade levels to ensure coherent instruction. So what are some opportunities? Hold on just a second. Here we go. Opportunities for growth. In the area of curriculum, currently the district curriculum is based on textbook or topics or lessons rather than the standards. We know the standards exist, we know they're there, we've unpacked them to a certain degree, but across the system, much of mathematics work is driven by the textbook. Students report that they go through their textbook lesson by lesson. Teachers see their textbook as their curriculum rather than a resource to support the teaching of the standards. They feel they must get through as much of the book. There's a lot of pressure in that, and making sure that they're ready for the next year and the next year and the next year. And then not all teachers are aware of the outcomes of the math committee curriculum work. That's just a communication piece that needs to be improved. While there is good standards work happening, teachers across the district are not aware of it. Some teachers, when probed, were unaware of what priority standards even were, while others report that they do not know the standards well enough to have standards conversations with parents. With such a small number of teachers involved in the standards work and little or no transfer of learning to the rest of the staff, the good work that is happening will stay in pockets, not be systematic, and lack sustainability. And then the last one, we talked to lots of parents and got information from them. Parents are unsure of how to help their students be successful at home. Again, that's pretty universal with math and how it's changed. You know, the kids will say, well, that's not how my teacher does it. You know, so there's just that little gap right there where parents are just frustrated with that piece. Teachers send home syllabi at the beginning of the year in middle school and high school, and some teachers at the elementary send home newsletters. But parents want different and more frequent information from teachers. Many parents felt disconnected from the classroom and that they seek out their own resources to learn the math content to be able to support their kids at home. So they'll go online and they'll find out different methods and different ways to help their kids with the different problems. Teachers report that the new math resource, Envision, has lots of parent resources, but they are not being used by most of the teachers at this point. As math concepts and strategies have become more complex and different than the way parents learned, they aren't as sure about how to do it.
And we're going to go on to the next system that we looked at, the next part, which is the assessment, system of assessment. And if we look at that second area of focus then, you see the first one, defining the assessment system. And then we have assessing what each student needs, knows and needs to learn next. And then providing frequent and timely descriptive assessment feedback, using assessment data and information to drive instruction, and then using the data and the information to recognize growth and achievement. And a balanced and coherent blend of formative and summative assessments that align to the common learning outcomes of the guaranteed and viable curriculum is one of the most powerful, high-leverage strategies for improving student learning. So a system of assessments answers that next question that a professional learning community would ask, and that's how will we know what each student has learned and when they have learned it? So data from these assessments can be used to diagnose, prescribe, or modify instruction, calibrate the pace of instruction, create entrance and exit criteria for interventions, and identify opportunities for extension and enrichment. So it's really important to have that alignment and balance between the types of assessment in order to guide instruction. Some strengths that we saw were that there were some conversations happening between teachers and students around assessment data. Some teachers were having conversations with the students about their MAP scores, their growth goals that have been provided by the NWEA. That's part of the MAP program, the Northwest Educational Assessment Program. And students know the breakdown of their scores, and they also seem to know what score they would need to achieve in order to reach their targets. So this is really good news. And engaging students in conversations around their personal data and goal setting is really a powerful, high-yield strategy for improving student performance. And it's even more powerful when it's an ingrained part of a strong assessment system. Second strength that we saw was that there's evidence of vertical conversations of student performance between some grade levels and schools. So as students move between the grades and the schools and between schools, there's some conversations happening about the students' strengths, the challenges that they're facing, and some of their performances in math. But these conversations are so important because teachers need to have this information in order to make instructional planning decisions to ensure that the instruction meets the needs of the students that are coming in as a new group. Information about groups and also about individuals, their master topics, the topics that were difficult for students, and impact that this might have on the next grade level's instructional plan are key to making sure that there's a match between the curriculum, the assessment, and then the instruction. Some opportunities for growth that we saw was the first, that there was no defined assessment system in place to align the classroom and the schools. So it's a system we're looking for. And while some teachers use the formative pre- and post-assessments that came with the textbook, others found or made their own assessments. And students felt that there was a disconnect then between classrooms, that some grade levels or courses, or when it came to assessments, or when some teachers assessed, the way they assessed, some were harder, they call it harder than others. Within the same grade or the course, when they were talking to their friends and they would compare classes or assessments, there was a discrepancy there. So a defined assessment system is one of the foundation pieces of this guaranteed and viable curriculum system, and it's the engine then that drives continuous improvement of instruction. The lack of consistent learning expectations and student performance data does not allow for critical conversations to happen around data to close any learning gaps that might be there. The second opportunity we saw was that students were receiving mostly evaluative feedback on their assignments and assessments. So it was more about the grade, not about specific coaching type of feedback that they could use to really hone in on what they needed to learn. And so often it happens where even if teachers were putting in specific feedback, as we all know, you look for the grade and then you go back and then you read the details later. But in this case, a lot of the teachers were just giving the grades to begin with. And they were using, parents said that they did see the grades on PowerSchool, which is great because they are going into it, and the parents were really appreciative that they have that access to the portal, that they could check on student assignments that hadn't been turned in or on the assessment. But it was not enough information for them to know what the students still needed to learn or be able to do. It was really just about the grade and the assignment. So they didn't know how to help them. So it was that absence of feedback about where students were in their learning, where they need to go, or what the next step is to close the gap that was impeding the ability of students to focus their learning efforts and parents to support the efforts of their children at home in order to help them to improve. So those were two areas that we saw there. Then if we look at our third area, the third system was on instruction. And there we look at the three categories here: differentiating instruction, aligning interventions, and aligning enrichments. Instruction answers the third and fourth critical questions that a professional learning community would ask. And that's, how will we respond when a student is experiencing difficulty in learning? How will we respond to those who are already proficient? Is the response given to the assessment system data, is it bringing alignment to the guaranteed and viable curriculums? We want to make sure that those questions are being asked because, as we all know, not every child is going to learn at the same pace. And not every child is going to master those common learning targets the first time around. Some will have difficulty mastering them at all, and still others will master them quickly, but will not be challenged. So all students, and this was an equity issue, must be challenged to learn at their highest levels. And all students, and this becomes an equality issue, must master the guaranteed and viable curriculum, even when the interventions vary from student to student. That is their right as far as instruction. Two strengths that we noticed in instruction. One was that there is evidence of varied and differentiated instruction happening throughout the district. And some teachers were using the supplemental materials provided by the new math series as an attempt to differentiate for students. Other teachers were using small groups to try to address individual student needs. There was some guided math instruction happening in several elementary classrooms that we visited, and this was happening with fidelity, and there was positive data to show that it was effective in those classrooms that were using it. And guided math was small groups, targeted goals that meet the needs of the students in that particular flexible small group. And many times there were also centers in those classrooms that went with the guided math that we saw. Teachers were attempting to provide students with engaging instruction, and whether it was teacher-led or in small group. Students also reported that in some classrooms they were engaged in work that aligned to their MAP, their RIT band. That's their score band for an interval score that they have, the range of scores that they have from the MAP test. And differentiated instruction in general is the main strategy needed to address student struggles, especially when you're looking at students that are having difficulty. That's needed to address the Tier 1 core instruction as part of a multi-tiered support system. The second strength, we saw that there were some mathematics supports for struggling students happening beyond the core instruction throughout the district. Middle school has a flexible RTI block during study halls, and that provided students with additional math supports outside of their core math classes, as well as an after-school tutoring program which was very impressive because they even had an activity bus option so that the parents didn't have to worry about how to pick up the students after school. Teachers at the high school were offering optional support before and after school. And there was also push-in support at some grade levels for math support where paraprofessionals were coming in and supporting students that had some learning needs there. And then computer programs were also being used to reinforce the math facts and basic math skills. So supports beyond the classroom are key when addressing student learning needs beyond the core instruction. Some opportunities for growth. First one we saw was that differentiation of instruction is not systematic, like we talked about before. It really is all about becoming a system. So it's not hit or miss, but you really want to have a systematic approach so it's just part of the natural nature of the classroom and of the district's program. So while there are pockets of engaging or challenging instruction happening throughout the district, the overall instruction that we saw was textbook or teaching focused rather than learning focused. And most observed instruction, or the instruction that students were reporting on, was direct instruction, with the majority being teacher talk and minimal student engagement or student talk. Because when you start talking about mathematics, that's when you're really having that student-centered instruction going on, and that's when the learning really becomes at a higher level, when the students start to use the math vocabulary themselves, and they start talking about it. Teachers were using pacing as a differentiation technique, so slowing down the instruction, but with the same, slowing down the pace, but with the same instruction being used for students that were having difficulty understanding certain concepts. So that was a technique that maybe could have been different types of materials being used instead of just slowing down the pace. Teachers reported that they try to differentiate, but they don't have anyone to ask for guidance or help on how to intervene or support beyond the core curriculum, and that training on strategies and approaches for engaging, differentiated instruction has not occurred at all levels. Some levels and some schools had more than others. But the lack of support for teachers in effective differentiation strategies and tools can continue to cause a lack of student engagement and skill and stifle student growth in math. So you want to make sure that you really are meeting the needs of the students where they're at and having a plan to continue to have them grow forward. Second opportunity was that there was inadequate or intermittent interventions and enrichments available to impact achievement. It's a mouthful to say, but they were occurring in addition to math instruction, but not available at all levels throughout the district. And parents report that this support differed from school to school. So we want to make sure that it's system-wide and, again, part of a district plan. Teachers were attempting to address the needs of students struggling with math concepts and skills, but they reported they had limited time and knowledge to provide this support. The teachers were providing enrichment work for students within the classroom, but students were reporting that they had to ask for it because it was optional if they wanted to do more challenging work. Students either had interventions within their classrooms or they had an IEP, but there was no Tier 2 intervention where there were research-based programs that students could either be pulled out for or done in the classroom, other than either the two opposite ends, where you're in the classroom or you have an IEP. So teachers report that there are a lot of resources directed towards language arts intervention support, but there were very small numbers when compared for mathematics. So without predictable, repeatable processes for interventions and enrichment supports, the student learning needs cannot be systematically met in order to allow all students to perform at a proficient level or even beyond.
Another very important area is the focus on learning with the support, ensuring a focus. That's where we're going to make sure that that learning is happening. These practices and procedures outline the expectations for implementation with fidelity of the guaranteed and viable curriculum, the aligned, balanced, and coherent assessment system, and the alignment of the system for differentiation, which Terry spoke about, interventions, and the enrichments. They address the importance of an optimal learning environment, the grading, the homework, the training, the support, and the aligned resources. They all have to go together in order for the whole system to act like a system. The strengths that we found in the area of support was that there is a positive climate reflected in the district and schools. And I can't say that enough. This isn't something that should be taken for granted. That doesn't happen in some places where we go, not naming names. But it's something that when it's in place, you have the potential to have such a beautiful, PLC going on and people working together and collaborating. But there's some suggestions that we'll have in a little while to help make that even better. So students reported that they have positive relationships with their teachers. That's huge. And they feel that the teachers care about them. They won't say that if they don't believe that. The superintendent is visible in the classrooms and students know him by name. Schools have recognition processes for positive student behavior, like PBIS, Viking Pride program, and the routines are in place and visible around behavior and expectations. Again, those things are in place, you can move on to some more important nitty-gritty things. There seems to be an overall positive culture between teachers, principals, and district administrators. Teachers report that they feel supported by the administrators, and the new superintendent has improved the morale of the staff. A positive school climate that addresses both the academic and social-emotional needs of students is critical to enhance the student learning. The second thing we saw is that there is a professional learning being offered for teachers on relevant math topics. K-5 teachers are receiving the professional learning on important math topics like the guided math that we talked about, math discourse, and problem solving. Some teachers are moving forward to implement these strategies in their classrooms, and some have even sought out additional training in one or more of these areas on their own. Providing teachers with targeted, high-quality learning opportunities with follow-up support is instrumental when working to improve student learning. We all know that you can have a great PLD, but if you don't do anything with it and you don't support it afterwards, it's not as helpful as it could be. Some opportunities for improvement in the area of support would be the district performance in mathematics is not as strong as it could be if there was a full-time district-level curriculum director. A director of curriculum is a full-time role for one person, and in many K-12 districts, that person has a team working with them to plan, to align, to develop, to implement, to direct, to evaluate the district's curriculum instruction programs, providing leadership and supervision to various curriculum instruction support departments. And, in addition to all of those things, managing the instructional support functions for the district's schools. Cheryl and Molly work hard. They work so hard, and they're very knowledgeable to do all of those things. But with Cheryl being part-time and Molly also being a full-time principal, it is not as cohesive and effective as it could be if this was a sole focus for one person. A director of curriculum who is experienced in long-range planning and building a standards-based curriculum system would be able to prioritize, streamline, and systematize the newly forming guaranteed and viable curriculum. There are some districts this size that actually, when they go K to 12, have 2 curriculum directors, because the things that are important at kindergarten need to connect all the way up with that vertical alignment, but they're completely different than what's happening in 12th grade. There is a lack of clarity. This is just one more area. There is a lack of clarity and consistency around homework, grading, and success criteria across the schools, grade level teams, and the district. Students and parents report an unclear and inconsistent message from teacher to teacher, and we talked about this a little bit already, within grade levels and within schools around the homework and the grading. Parents report that success criteria and expectations differ from teacher to teacher within the same grade level, and students know which teachers are the hard teachers, like Terry said, and which ones are the easier ones. This is something that can be remedied by teachers collaboratively diving deep into the standards and developing success criteria aligned to the standards. Common expectations, as well as a buy-in by all teachers and that's that communication piece. When you know more, you feel like you can buy in a little bit more, is an outcome when this work is done collaboratively. There is a need for highly qualified intervention support as well. There's been a push to include support for mathematics K-5 by using paraprofessionals as push-in or pull-out interventions. And we saw this when we talked to paras and we talked to teachers. They're wonderful people. Teachers, however, are using interventionists as differentiation support. Teachers and paras do not feel that this is adequate support in that the paras are not mathematically trained or certified to be able to provide these specific supports in the tiers. Their use varies by school. Some is intended, some not. And there's also a lack of time for teachers to collaborate with the paras in order to talk about what we're going to do today and why we're going to do it and what you should watch for and how you might respond to it with the different kiddos. By providing those who provide interventions with the targeted professional learning to be better equipped to address the learning needs, there is a greater chance of reaching the intended gains in the student performance. A strong Tier 2 intervention system with entry and exit criteria is crucial to fill the gaps for the students who need that support beyond the classroom differentiation. So you can differentiate within the classroom, but then sometimes you need a little bit more, as well as a vehicle to gather data in support. Terry's going to talk about some next steps.
So we want to keep in mind that what we've talked about in the report is not intended to be prescriptive. It's suggestions that we have come up with, really highlighting the key opportunities for improvement. And the next steps that we are suggesting are just framed by the experiences of our team and opinions of our team, but based on other districts and what we've seen to be effective. So you want to keep that in the back of your head, that it's not taking everything that we say, it's really what fits for you. And see what fits and then develop an appropriate and applicable plan for how you want to move forward. So if we start with some possible next steps that we have, the first one, like we've talked about before, is to really explore those options to have a focused and dedicated curriculum director, instructional leader. It could also be made up of a team, maybe somebody heading it up, but a whole team, again, dedicated for that role, focusing solely on improving teaching and learning for all students, and not just in math. We were here focusing on math, but really looking at all levels. And talking like what Liz mentioned before, just making sure that from kindergarten to 12th that there's a very coherent instruction that's in place that is instruction aligned and assessment, so that it all goes together and then you have the communication between the grade levels. And if that's directed by a focused person or team, then it can be monitored and checked on for professional development and anything else that might be missing.
Yep. So the next part we were thinking as a next possible step is to allocate more dedicated time for the teacher collaboration for grade level teams to discuss and share the great things that are happening throughout the district. That takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of planning for the different schedules. We understand that, but we have seen it happen, and there's lots of ways that you can build off of other districts for that information.
The third next step would be to develop this comprehensive multi-tiered support system that includes a really strong Tier 2 and Tier 3 support, so that you can really see when students are responding to the intervention before you have to go into case studies or IEPs and having those meetings, that you really can see what can be done in the classroom with paraprofessionals, with special ed, but really putting some of those pieces in place in the classroom or in small pull-out or push-in groups, again, at the system level. So it's not just hit or miss by the classroom or by the teacher, but developing a really comprehensive system of support.
And then the next one is to identify a method of including more teachers in that curriculum work. Not only opening up the communication piece, but having people that are piloting the different curriculum pieces be able to share back out what's good, what's not good, having that conversation with teachers. Because we did find that teachers felt a little bit out of the loop. But that's one that's a communication piece and, again, a planning piece. It's big, but it's important.
And then another next step that we didn't put on the slide, but we think is really important too, we had some wonderfully involved parents that we met with, and they want to learn more about math. And again, maybe there's a lot of other subjects that they would like to learn more about too, but we really felt it would be important to increase and standardize the type of communication that's going out to parents for mathematics. As Liz mentioned before, parents are going out trying to find their own resources to help the students, but you could have teachers create videos showing the strategies, showing the steps of how to solve some of these newer methods that maybe they didn't have in school to kind of decrease the amount of battles that might be occurring at home when a child says, that's not how my teacher wants us to do this, but showing some of those alternate methods of solving problems and some of the computational strategies that are being used. But really including the content, what the mastery expectations are, and any sample problems with the explanations. If that could be somehow systematized so that every teacher has some expectation, or one person's doing it for the district for each grade level, where there's a grade level parent piece, communication piece, we thought that would be really helpful.
We talked with different buildings about family math nights, and so that is existing, but I think maybe it just needs a little more planning and communication, so parents can come in and play with the work, the math, so that they can see what it feels like to be a kid.
So we threw a lot of information out at you in a short period of time. And again, this is for you to process and to move forward with through the curriculum committees and other administrative teams, staff teams, but for your information to see what we saw, to try to understand what we had experienced here. But we're happy to entertain any questions or need for clarification that you have.
Could you please define what an assessment system is? Quite a few slides back, I didn't want to stop you, but I
Sure.
think we might need a definition or maybe even an example of an assessment system.
It's a system that has both formative and summative assessments, so assessments that are given formative, like along the way. So maybe after each lesson or every couple of lessons, some teachers give what's called entrance or exit tickets or slips, where after an assignment, they can see what percentage of students understood that particular concept. So that would be known as a formative assessment. And then at the end of the unit or the end of the book or end of the chapter, whatever it might be, then there's something summative to give the teacher an idea of how many students actually mastered that particular topic if it was done for mastery. So it's a combination of assessments, the different types of assessments that are used in the classroom or at the school level to understand what students actually learned and what still needs to be taught or what needs to be learned.
And it's not the standardized size.
No.
Yep. It's more
So
the
this is
classroom
yes,
topical.
the active, like, even when you give a student a pretest, you see how they're doing, what they know, what they need to know, and then you go from there.
And then the MAP assessment certainly ties into that, because then there's some targets, learning targets, and you can really differentiate instruction for that. But it's also just answering that question, how will the teachers know what students have learned and when they have learned it, so that they know if they've already learned it. And often teachers will do a pretest at the beginning of the unit, and it will surprise them, because so often some of the students, especially those at a higher level, might already know that information before they've even taught it. So then what do you do with those students? Do you just continue to teach it, or do you give them something more challenging so that they can move on into something that is a little more enriching for them? So it's all
With
part
the
of
math
assessment.
committee will be huge, because they can plan those things and predict some of those things ahead of time.
And what if a student is so far off of what the grade level expectation is? How do you just continue, if the level is up here and they're still over here, maybe 2 grade levels behind, do you just continue to teach what the classroom teacher had prescribed? Okay, well, I'm sorry, but this is the next lesson. What are you going to do with the assessment? So that's why the more you know about the students through the assessment, the better you're able to align the instruction to that. So it all goes together, the curriculum, the instruction, the assessment. It's all part of it.
So a capital assessment system isn't a particular system, it's just any form of assessment that any class at any level decides to implement? Because in capitals, I assumed, and the way you said, there's no defined assessment system in
So-
place to align classrooms and schools. It makes me think that there is
There's a secret one.
some sort of well-defined that transcends all subjects and all levels and vertically and horizontally and school to school? No, that's not what you meant by that.
No.
Okay.
No, but it is a system that hopefully every grade level teacher is using similar things so that it's not different from class to class, but they have recommended formative assessments or summative assessments that everybody knows at the end of this unit or pre-test before that they're all going to use. So it's not just up to the teacher, but it's really prescribed that aligns with the standards.
And
that
it's
are being
based
taught.
on those non-negotiable essential
Exactly.
standards that
the
you've talked about.
Guaranteed
Yeah.
curriculum, guaranteed and valuable.
And
Does that
could you also define tier, I'm sorry, did anybody else need any clarification on that?
help?
Could you define tier 2 and tier 3 later on
So your
in
tier
your
1, your
presentation?
correct me if I'm,
So-
your tier 1 is your main core curriculum that you're giving to most of your kids, and most of your kids will succeed with that curriculum, okay? But then there will be the kids that struggle for tier 2.
And that might be where there's small groups in the classroom. Tier 2 could have research-based, sometimes we saw that with the computer programs being used. We saw a lot more with computation, but there are different programs that can be used to see, sometimes even groups are formed with paraprofessionals or a teacher small group where they're doing either more of or different types of materials to try to catch them up, catch those students who are below level, catch them up to where the class is and see how they respond to that intervention. Oftentimes, they've also done some little pull-out groups, maybe during an extra time. If they're behind in math, they could go into another room and work on a particular program with other students and see how they respond to that before going up to tier 3, which then starts to get into looking for an IEP or working with special ed teachers. So it's part of this whole multi-tiered support system, whereas before we used to just never had a tier. We would just say, oh, this student's not able to keep up, they must have some learning difficulty, let's go ahead and test them and put them into a special education program. So now with this multi-tiered support system and response to intervention, a school district really has to show how a student is responding to any programs or different types of materials or instruction that has been put in place for them before they can go on and to say they really need to go into a special education IEP program, an individualized educational plan.
Is it common for you to see the different opinions of the survey respondents versus the auditors?
Great
And I
question.
think that was something that really stood out for me as you look down through there. There was never a situation where what our staff felt where they were and where you guys said they were. Is that common?
It actually is
It's
for a
very
lot of the
common.
places we go. And it was like Carrie said at the beginning, when you're in the heat of it, you know what you want to be doing, you know what you should be doing, you know all of those things. But then what's really being done when you put all of these pieces together is usually different.
And remember, individuals, maybe in and again, because of the numbers of who returned the survey, it could have been too that the teachers who returned the survey are those that are doing those ones that we highlighted as strengths, that they had some of the interventions and the supports and they were using the assessments. We don't know who filled that out, but it is very, very common because you're so close, you're too close, you're inside, and you don't have that bird's eye view, and you don't know, even as a principal, you know what's happening from class to class, but as a teacher, you're still really focused on just what you're doing in your classroom. You don't really know what everybody else is doing, especially if you don't have the time to work with collaboration and working in this professional learning community across district grade level teams. We saw that at the high school and at the middle school that they had more of that going on. But at the elementaries, it's very difficult if that time is not allocated for that common planning time or professional learning teams to get together. You don't know what somebody next door to you is teaching and how they're teaching it. So someone's got this great effective practice or the guided math programs, but if no one has the time to be able to share or even to go in and watch somebody do it, it just, like we talked about, it just becomes an isolated event happening.
One of the things that I know we've talked about from the administrative side that's a hurdle that we're trying to overcome is putting this process in place. And now having the collaboration time with the teachers. When we've put together our curricular committees, you've got a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher, you've got all your buildings represented. But now, getting it horizontally to all the second graders is a little bit, and that's, we're trying to use chalk, but ramping that out and taking the time for the collaboration and the understanding. You know, when we've got 2 built-in institute days, you know, finding that collaboration time and then having that work done.
It's a huge challenge for districts, and that's why some districts have gone with early release days, late start days, substitutes that come in, rotating subs to go, and relieve, but especially when you want to have the cross-grade level team, a grade level team across the district, you want to have those kinds of meetings, it gets difficult. And we did hear people, a lot of, things are happening with the chalk. They are starting to put that down, but it's only as good as those people that are entering their information on it. But you've got some great
And getting some
instruction.
consistency and some collaboration there is taking it's taking some time to get that done too.
Yeah, and who's monitoring that? And
Yes.
how do you, with everybody being so busy, it's one more thing to ask teachers to go ahead and now take time and write down what you're doing, where it's so much is the thinking time and the collaboration. And I think it's also developing that program. So when teachers have collaboration time, it's not about scheduling, assemblies or field trips or doing that. It's really about the instruction. So it's a different mindset from years ago when people only have a short amount of time to get together. But if you have these bigger blocks, at least 45 minutes, and you can talk about instruction and model instruction from class to class and have teachers go and observe their peers, that's
And
a
you can
great
have a
thing.
team of administrators and teachers work together to say,
Totally.
this is what I want our agenda to look like for this prescribed PLC.
Professional learning community.
How many surveys did you folks send out?
I think it was actually through the district, but it was 117, I believe, and we got, 47?
40, so. What's your typical number on that?
It's usually over 50.
Over 50.
50.
And I feel like we use the information from talking with people to balance that out as well.
We did meet with a lot of people,
Mhm.
so that was good. Even if they didn't fill out a survey, again, we felt they were very honest about their opinions, and that's what we did write down and focus on. And nobody thought that their information was going to be brought back to them specifically, because that was one thing that we were really clear about with students, with staff, with everybody, was that it wasn't going to be attributed by name, but it would be maybe a group, like the students felt, or the parents believed, that kind of thing. But we never put down names of who said what.
We did get asked about what's going to happen with this report, and Mike has very clearly said it's going to be transparent, we're going to share, and however you put that together is really important to teachers, I think. Because otherwise they feel like, the time that they spent with us was,
Why?
Do you have instances where you return and re-audit programs?
Absolutely.
What type of frequency does that look like?
Usually it's not within a year. It's a couple of years to get things going, and also any of the supports that we can offer in this process so that we can help make it happen. Yeah.
And that's
3
what the
years, 5
Consortium for
years.
Educational Change does. It's not just that we come in and we audit, but then we also help to get to that level. We help to develop the assessment system, the instruction, or that's where you have your curriculum director or somebody who's going to be dedicated to do that. But we can certainly offer advice, so it's standards-based.
Could you expand on the supports a little bit? That was the first time, I guess, my assumption was that you guys just audited and then, that was the end of it.
No. We wouldn't like that. We have a huge team, and so everybody has expertise in different areas. So if you did say, we want to outline an assessment process, we want to know what that system is going to look like, and you would contact us, and then we would find the right people, the strong people for that specific task.
And they would work with committees. Right now I'm doing a lot with teacher evaluation, so I work with school districts, and we work with committee and develop rubrics, and it just depends on the topic. Another one we worked with was behavior. So we come in as consultants and really work with teams of teachers and administrators and develop something that fits. So it's not us coming in with a predetermined program, it's what fits the district.
And I've shared with Mike, we're doing big pieces on the community involvement, because every single district we go into now has that as a school improvement. And they want more community involvement. It's not just offering food and babysitting, there's other pieces to it that are hoping to really make a difference.
Mike has the pay schedule for that consultant time. He knows what's still available.
Yeah, they sent me some links, so, I thought the parent piece was kind of an interesting piece that jumped out of the report. you
Yeah.
know.
They are looking for, parents want that. How great is
And
that?
as
They want to be involved.
parent of a high school student, when I come home and they're handing me the textbook and asking for help in math, as a superintendent of schools, I couldn't feel dumber.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it is tough. It's tough for hot people.
What was nice about when, at least at the parent meeting that I was at and helping to facilitate, was that they were learning from each other. So when they were there and they were hearing what resources some people went to on the internet, they were writing it all down. So it was, in itself, it was an informative process, even though we were collecting the data. They just seemed to be very thirsty for that kind of information, and they wanted to interact with each other for it.
I think that's something that's true about all parents. Even if they're really busy, they still want to help.
And for those that can't come out at night or during the day, that's where the internet piece can come, where it's coming from the district, where it's the teachers themselves who are showing how to solve particular problems, and not some other party that just said, here's the method, but really aligning it with how it's being done in the classroom.
Any other questions? Terry, Liz, thank you guys so much.
Oh,
Really
thank
appreciate
you.
all the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, one of the best presentations we've ever seen here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Present company excluded, of course. All right, that was just information.
Informational
So no
only tonight,
vote. All right, that brings us to item C. Thank you, folks.
Thank
Online
you again.
registration.
Give me 1 second to grab my next one.
And is that going to be, that's going to curriculum?
Yes, I'll bring that to the curriculum committee December 4th, that report. So, online registration, yeah, I'd like to recommend that the board approve the quote from Power School for $13,591.95. We would like to move forward with online registration. The quote does cover setup, training, and the annual fee for the registration. Melissa and I did run some figures. We ran that just for us to run our 2 registration days in the summer, we're at about 650 hours of what that costs to run that with all the personnel involved. Also, cost of it is about $18,000. So what I'd like to do is to take that money that we typically allot for that and use that for extra hours or part-time help to help with the implementation process, which should help move us forward. Not that much money, I shouldn't need that much. But what we'd like to do is get started on the training, have some extra hours, and possibly look at someone for helping us with, and what that looks like for implementation, so that we can start that right after Christmas to move forward with online registration for the upcoming spring.
Did you have any luck with any of the questions we had about?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so one of the questions was security-wise. Tech said that we do have a firewall in place, so that's part of that security when we use internet in districts. So that's already in place. They had also said that Power School has some responsibility in that security as well. So they've got things in place to make sure that there's badges and things aren't hacking out and all this kind of stuff. So the security piece, that was kind of a twofold there. The hardware piece, there was a question about would we need more hardware. They said it kind of depends on the specs of what that registration software would be. Randy had said that maybe they may need like a $200 certificate or something. So it didn't sound like it was going to be anything above what we already have to host Power School, because Power School is a virtual thing, and so it's kind of one of those things where they felt like we had what we needed right now to do that.
Meaning Power School exists on a server somewhere afar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of the Power School stuff that is served here or is on our server here, they felt like we could maintain that with what we have from what they know of the implementation there. So it didn't feel like there was any necessary major hardware things that needed to be done right now. The fees was another thing that we talked about at the business service meeting. Power School has a preferred partner with Heartland, which does My School Bucks. They charge a fee to use that, but it interfaces with Power School, and so you can have a one sign-on, so the parents can log into one place and they can register and their fees and everything will be there. So I feel like that would be, since they're already working with Power School, that may be a nice fit, so that some of those bugs would already be kind of worked out there. Any other questions?
Were they using PayPal, or what were they using for the financial piece?
It's the My School Bucks is what they use, and so they almost operate like a credit card company. So they said every day parents can pay online with their credit card. Then it gets batch filed up to the district, and so the district, I can say I want PE uniforms charged to this account, this revenue account, and so at night it gets uploaded, and then we get a report that goes to our bank account, and then we get a report that says $50 will be added to this account for PE uniforms, and that's not something that we can do right now. Right now, it's just you got $50, and then we go back to receipts and say where does this need to go. So there's just some nice accounting features that could go there. If a parent went to a school and wanted to pay with a credit card, we could either have a computer there that they could log into and sign up and pay the credit card there. We still can accept cash and credit card, or cash and checks. Obviously, that's not something that's going to go away. But the district can decide, like, if we really want parents to pay with credit cards or pay online, or we can have some stations set up at the school, or I've seen some people, you can use your phone or iPads where you swipe. So there's some different options if we can get creative with that.
Well, you say there's a fee, is that fee assessed to the school district or to the parent?
That's something that we can decide what we want to do. The manager too said that some people pass that along to parents, and some school districts will either incorporate that into their fees already, or the district will eat it. So personally, I don't think that's something that we should pay parents for. It's like 4% for this company.
And didn't they say that a lot of the school districts will work that into
Yes.
their fee structure so that it encourages the online registration?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, online registration is going to save us time. It's going to be cleaner for our folks. We're going to have more options with the county on that side of it. We're going to have just hopefully parents paying their fees quicker and faster. And so I feel like if we could either roll into our fees or somehow absorb those, potentially we may save time on the other end too. But that is, there's just some ideas. A lot of schools are for passing it along in the fee structure. Another question?
So that would be a change over what we do with like the lunch program now, where we pass the fees on to the parents.
Correct. Yeah, and our lunch program now, I think it's $1 for every transaction and $2.95-ish for every $100, I think, somewhere around there. So those fees right now are being passed on to parents. So that's something when we talk about fees or whatever, but that is, and it's a different system too. So I would work with food services and decide, migrate some of that stuff. So it's all one.
I didn't understand what you just asked. What is passed along to parents?
I thought it was a lot higher than that. We're talking about potentially eating the convenience fee on the registration part. Today in our school lunches, we tack on money if a parent uses a charge card or calls in a charge card. And I
Okay.
was thinking it was
Is it more
a
than
lot higher than that.
And that was,
yeah.
I think, the quote he gave me for registration, so it could be different for
Okay.
lunches. But yeah, if I'm gonna go and pay $50 on my kid's lunch, I may end up paying $54 or $52.50.
If you
or
use a
something,
credit card.
If I use my credit card.
Okay.
But if I walk in and pay Mary at Public Road with a check, then there's no fee attached to that. But from our standpoint, if I pay with a credit card, now it's in our bank account tonight, and I have a printout of what account it went into. Do you see what I mean? So it's a nice feature for the district to be able to have that money just flow streamlessly instead of putting it in a bank bag and driving to the bank. And, it works either way, but if we're going to go to online registration, then I think that ease of paying online is a perk that we can take advantage
Is online, that was one of my questions, is how does this sync in with the long-range technology plan? Is this
Seems to be
an
pretty
entirely separate
pretty
entity?
separate.
It's separate, yeah. This is more of a business function than it is the curriculum function.
But it doesn't need to be, there's no chance of tying it in with a grander system, or are we going to have sort of separate payment systems and lunch systems and registration
No,
systems and academic
what
systems?
I'm talking about there is you'd want to synchronize business systems. Yeah, and she just mentioned that with the lunch system and then the registration system, you want that synced or tied in. But if you're
Correct me if I'm
looking,
wrong, but this was supposed to take care of all transactions financially between the parents and the school district. Everything was included in this package.
That's, yeah.
In the this power school.
And this power
Which-
school.
Which we already have Power School.
We have
It's just
Power
adding
School.
another feature of Power School here.
Power School is not something that's on the horizon to change at the moment. It is working and synced and communicating with all state functions, with all the EBMs. So to walk away from it now would be another whole big skirt that issues that I probably wouldn't bring.
That was gonna be my question. We're gonna stick with Power School 5+ years.
Yeah, for me to go away from Power School right now, I'd be real concerned from that. I would rather spend time, resources, and energy on a whole bunch of other things district-wide, possibly especially curriculum, than moving away from Power School. That wouldn't be one of my top priorities right now. Because it does functionally what we need it to do. It's clean, it's working pretty clean. Not pretty clean, really, really clean. And I'm trying to think of, on the state side, of what issues we have with Power School not syncing. If we have an issue, it's usually because we've got to correct some data.
My understanding, how Power School has specific upgrades.
Which we've done over the last few
Concerns
years.
that we had about it to begin with, they kind of listen to other people, like updates, or
So we're syncing consistently with the state and all uploads that we need to do.
What percentage of the registration process would be covered by this package? And have you given some estimation as far as what you think the adoption rate would be for parents? Or would there not really be options other than the online system, whether it be in office?
What we would do is we would allow the option to come into office to be able to do it. I would never, ever take that away. We'd probably work very high to encourage the online registration process. And that goes back to that system of support I was talking about, is to find ways that is very systematic, and I almost want to say in progressions that's adaptable for parents and simple to understand, with good support to be able to work towards the online registration process. That was my piece with my thought with implementation, and not try to do it within 1-2 days or a week, but spread it out over the whole spring, so that you've got a good size window for parents to be able to go in and do it. And, you know, talk to Jerry even about doing videos that parents could download off our website and walk them through the process and all those types of things. Just a variety of different informational things like that. But you need a little time to train and develop that and get that in. I don't want to try to jam it in May in a 1-month thing. We have pre-kindergarten registration coming up usually in February. I'd love to have some of that stuff ramped out at the start of that even.
And this covers pretty comprehensively the steps that all of our students need for the registration process.
That's the training and the piece, putting it in those 11 tables that you guys are stuck going to every year.
Sure.
And we
Just
get
making
to
sure
the
that's
district
incorporated.
side. This form is really important to us. Power School make this happen inside our registration. And so that's part of this time to build our registration portal. Is it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's here's kind of a template. What do you need, North Boone, and this is something that we can decide. Even to what information the parents have to re-enter. So we may say, you don't have to enter your name and stuff,
I
but
was
we
just
want a
gonna
phone
say.
number every year because that may change. Or we don't need anything, just check and make sure. So we get a lot of different choices on how much inputting and what.
We're hoping that some of the redundancy of
Yeah.
the information can be reduced and streamline some of that stuff too. Because it seems like we enter the same things or bring the same information to several different spots. If we could get rid of some of that, that'd be great too.
Does implementing some of this or getting this rolling so that you can begin that kindergarten registration in February, does that afford you an opportunity, or is there a plan for using that as kind of a soft open for the system so that you can still
Yeah,
make
so
changes?
here was kind of the idea that I had with my timeline here was if the board, pie in the sky approved tonight, we would start to begin to look to implement and get planning and training going December, and definitely the beginning of January. That's what I wanted to do, you know, and then it gives us even Christmas break for those that are in-house to work on some training. Have a good plan of start to roll things out for January, so that really by the beginning of February, you're ready to pilot, to try some of that stuff out for February. Kindergarten registration out here in conference halls.
And some of that's kind of in Power School's hands to do on how long they take to, to get it together and stuff. But yeah, I would be a nice soft opening, like you said, to put it.
And then not have, I want all first graders to register today from 1 to 5, but a window of time where people got some time to go in and do it and not feel rushed or crammed to get stuff done. The last thing I want is a broken registration process with lots of complaints and chaos.
And again, this is all included in a technology plan, the greater district technology plan.
We're working on it, but I mean, again, I'm looking at it as two different things. You're looking at a business software package stuff that kind of works with your student software, your employee information system, all of our student information systems, our state uploads, our student uploads that go there. The other side is the curriculum aspect. Is how are we using technology to support what's going on in the curriculum? And the business side and the student information side is about as smooth as we've had it since I've been here. And when I walked in, I think we were audited by everybody under the sun on the employee, financial, even some of the student side of everything we had. Most of our information is far more accurate than we've ever done in a while. And so for me to change that and walk away from that right now, I think we're wrong.
I'm not suggesting at all changing it. I'm just hoping that if we're jumping even more on board with Power School,
Let me
if
assure
you
you-
see this as two entirely separate things, and that's part of the plan, I'm okay with
Yeah,
it. But
no,
I would
I see
hate
it
for
as
us
two separate things, and
to
I
get
have
up,
no
to
plan
jump
of
in
moving
even
away from it.
deeper with one program, only to realize, oh, well, it can't do something else we would have wanted it to do, so we'll need to get this, and
In all of our conversations right now, there's nothing, and unless you're hiding something from me, there's nothing on the employee side we're not able to do and do consistently, do well with accuracy, or the student information side. So there's nothing right now that I see that we're wanting or leaving. Like I said, I have no problem saying I'm sticking with where we're at for the next several years until the state changes something else.
I resonate with I think what Joe's asking though, which is that when we are talking about technology plans, I don't know that I see these as absolutely disconnected,
Yeah.
just in that anything that's handled from the business administration side is somewhat linked to decisions that you're making with the curriculum side as well. So
Mhm.
I think if I can just kind of reiterate a little bit what Joe's saying, and when we talk about a technology plan, albeit maybe it's coming through the curriculum committee, or at least that's where we're talking about it next, that these other pieces are also things that I think fit in
Still
there because
being
they
planned
are
for.
driving technology needs.
Or costs and stuff.
Yep,
Yep,
absolutely.
totally get it. Yeah, right now I have no plan to move away from it. We've invested upgrades, we've cleaned a lot of things up, we're accurate with where we need to be for reporting.
Yeah. And that's a great thing to be able to say on a plan too, is like, say, I can confidently look 5 years into the future and say the software package that we're using will work well and we can plan around that. That's good.
all right, any further discussion?
I guess that I would feel, I still feel we're a little light on information here. And I would have liked the information that you had, Mike, about how many hours we had, how many, whether or not this is a cloud-based system that we have now, which I didn't think we had, but we're going to host this on our own hardware, which is what I thought we did with Power School. I would really feel better approaching this at the December board meeting and saying, here's what I'm looking to do. This is the implementation. These are the commitments I have from Power School for their consultants. This is my resource hours that I'm planning on. These are what I think our incidentals are going to be. This is what, to really have more of a defined implementation plan. If, for instance, if based on a board vote to go forward with at our December meeting, and based on that, here's where we would be at going forward. Here's what I think our expenses would be, our potential payback, cost avoidance. And I just would like to see more things written down on the proposal that we're voting on than what I feel I have in front of me right now. Anyway, that's so.
You're correct. Let me you're right, let me clarify this, because this is from Randy. It says that they believe that the online portion will be installed on the same server as Power School. So you're right, it's server-based. We said that because Power School is a virtual machine, there's a pool of resources that we could use there. Because it's an online, it's online. So it is stored on our server, but they feel like that online registration piece could be stored with our server. But because it's virtual, there's that piece of it too. So you're right there, that it is on a server, so. But it's also virtual, so it kind of has that piece there.
Which would mean is that he has, in his virtual server, there's extra resources available that he could designate towards this. But yeah, and I guess there's a part of me too, that being less than a week away from talking to vendors and understanding a little better, I feel like I'll be better informed. Because we had asked for some things too, like the video of it and things like that, and we still haven't been able to
Oh, okay.
to get that yet, or we haven't had that forwarded to us yet.
The video link?
There was a video about how Power School works or how this product works and things
Sure.
like that. And I guess I would prefer to
Little more.
defer it, and if we miss the February, I understand that you'd like that, but I'd rather be a little more informed.
I'd feel better if I saw it part of a bigger plan, even if you do see it as separate as, I do see this as technology that I would definitely want it to at least know we've considered, even if in an image you said this is separate from curriculum. I didn't think about this encompassing lunches also. I guess I'm interested to see what will it encompass. It does seem like the vendor would have maybe a spiel for us with a nice
that's
glitzy presentation of some sort that would highlight all the possibilities.
Yeah, we had hoped to be able to get to see the video.
Okay. We'll send that to you.
So we're
Bring it
just
to
going to
Tilly.
table this till the
Yeah, we'll bring
till
it to
December
Tilly.
meeting?
Let's-
Okay. Do you want people to get in touch with you to let you know if they have any more desires or
Oh,
wants for
absolutely.
what you're putting
Yeah.
together? Would everybody do that for Mike so he doesn't find himself in December with us asking for even more?
No, I'll try to have that information.
That'd be great.
Take a look.
I think some of the things that we've asked for were at the business meeting.
Yeah.
So,
I apologize.
And I apologize, that was the one I missed, so.
no, yes, sir.
No, but we can do that. And like I said, it was pie in the sky, but I knew even if we got to December, I'm still in good shape, so.
I would ask that maybe this be some sort of multi-spoked visual that where we can see lunches and fees, that it's visible to us, if that's possible.
So when you say that, Joe, I could see this software being tied in, and I think I go back more to what Mike is saying. I see this as being part, if you think of your business software, and tying into lunches, if you could tie it into bus scheduling or bus routing or things, anything that is driven off student data, I could see it tied into that. But when you get into the curriculum or technology in curriculum, I do see that being it's a separate discussion, and that's where, if you're trying to, if that's what you and Carl were saying, that you're
I
trying to
would-
marry that.
In my vision, a technology plan includes all technology, because, and excuse my lack of understanding of technology, like there'd be common servers and Wi-Fi, and I would think that even if they are functionally two different things, they still share a lot of wiring and hardware and.
But
I
what
would-
drives the business office, I don't know if I would, what drives the business needs of an organization is to me different than what drives your your customer base, or what your, so yeah, I just would see it differently.
But
What
I
a
could
student
break it-
needs in the classroom.
I could
Yeah.
break it up into a couple different branches
Okay.
like that, like what you're saying, because I think
Like, will we need more servers?
As you were saying it,
virtual
if I
servers?
look at it as a big picture of over the next few years, are you looking to possibly get a new business software? Are you looking to do,
That would, yeah.
at kind of more of an expenditure, or what to expect? Technology changes are coming down the line. on both sides, I get it.
You're looking at an all-in-one, all-encompassing software where you have the business service, student information and data management all in one package.
And in my mind, at the III meetings, it seems like we've seen plenty of opportunities for this to be all one platform. And I know at home, Schoology and Dojo and Facebook and Twitter, as a parent, and I'm not even the least capable parent I can imagine technologically, that every time you give a student or a parent another platform to try and navigate and figure out, it just makes them want to go, okay, what was my login for this one versus that one? And if it's single sign-on, like, I would hope that our business and our curriculum could still be single sign-on. And so that would be important to me as a parent, that I wouldn't have to remember my password for the business portion of North Boone, if it were possible that it synced, if that's a verb, synced, with the curricular side. So I might be totally off base where his mind in the technology plan is going, but in my mind, from what we've seen at III, this would all be very streamlined and possibly one. And if it's Power School, that's great. If Power School can do all the curricular side, and maybe it can. But I would hate for us to go this direction in business only to realize, oh, we want to go this direction in curriculum, when we could have gone the same direction with both. But I could be totally off base, and I'm not driving that bus. I just hope that whoever's putting together that plan is thinking about those 5 years down the road and how long, and could they all be single sign-in. I think that would be pretty important for parents. Because if we have...
For mine is, my kids go to school in Harlem. We registered online through Skyward, like through Power School. But I pay my lunch fund, send money to school, and I pay IP funds for my school fees. So I have to go to 3 separate entities to handle the same thing. And I'm just used to it at this point.
That's what we're gonna try and avoid.
Yeah.
That would be-
Okay, yes. Because I
I
know...
agree with Joe. The fewer
Yeah.
passwords and
I get it.
logins that I need to remember, the better.
And in our world, and probably the same thing in your world, that when we make students sign on with a textbook platform and then the school's learning management system, if you take 5 different courses that are using 5 different platforms plus the school's learning management, they just start to really get ornery and things get
And lucky
difficult.
for us, it's Randy and Kathy that have got to try to make those vendors talk with our systems, which
So
is another whole challenge.
I really have nothing in particular, no desire in particular, except that in my mind, I'd like to see it all be part of a bigger plan, even if the big plan has 3 giant separate spokes.
I'm worried there's 10 spokes, but
Yeah.
I'll see what I can
Which
do.
is why maybe I'm too visual, but I'd like to see this rather than talk about it.
Already does work with Power School.
Right.
Schoology and Power School.
You know,
Based.
yep.
So
Dojo?
As,
Also?
as does HMH Math, which we just adopted too, so, and I know that took some work this fall to make sure that all synced for kids. And again, I know that we're working to try to make sure sign-ons were all similar the whole way through. And HMH is saying that that's not our rule. Well, that's what we're trying to do, so try to eliminate some of that, so.
So I think the real challenge would be, one of the things that Tom brought up, is whether bus schedules would be able to interact with that system. What is she using?
Right now, we have Versatran with we typically are, we've been using just, our Google spreadsheets that we've always been using, but we're going towards Versatran right now. We've been looking at, Power School has an option to put bus numbers in, and so we talked about putting all the bus numbers into Power School. That way, if a bus is going to be late or something, we can do messengers out to just bus 61 or just bus 63. So utilizing that piece of Power School more, so that for communication-wise to parents, because that's one of the big things, is if a bus is late, who's going to call 60 parents? Like that's the hard thing, and so we're trying to use Power School in that action to just.
Diversity Trains had the ability to see in real time where the buses were.
I have not dug into it that far. I can let you know. I know they do quite capability as far as what, you know, if we have to push a bus or if we have to split a route or something like that.
And at these meetings, they've mentioned programs that include behavioral aspects, as well as early alert systems and things, busing systems,
Messaging systems.
sports systems. I don't know if sports communicates with anything, but it'd be great if it all synced in. Again, I'm sure somebody's looking into that in that greater technology plan. That would be my hope anyway.
And I wish sometimes too, I mean, when I sit and listen to those, I wish sometimes all their features were as strong as, or they all synced and were as strong as we hope they were. With that one size fits all, sometimes it's just not. Sometimes other systems just fit needs better too, which complicates it a little bit, but,
It's shocking that salespeople would do that.
And costs have been
Right,
substantially
we
different
can-
also, everything from $1 a student that's using to,
and some of those systems are very expensive.
Mhm. I'm sure all of that's part of the technology plan we're about to hear about.
You added about 6 spokes.
I better get on that committee. All right, I think we are ready for letter D, the technology plan.
Yeah, no, and that's just, we've asked to hold that as an agenda placeholder.
Okay.
It is still in the process. We'll ramp another spot out December 4th for more input, especially at the curriculum committee. If that's something that the business committee wanted to go back and review, based on what kind of we discussed there tonight, that might not be a bad thing either. That might be something where I speak with the committee chairs along the way. If we do a meeting, maybe we do both of them butted up together.
Is, not that I would think that it would be your job or Jerry's job or whomever, but if somebody out there soliciting vendors, looking into what are our options and asking 3 or 4 of them to come present to us, including our school and or somebody else. We've talked about, we seem to revisit this every time we go to III meeting and all those vendors give us their cards.
Right now, I'm more about developing the plan than I am
Okay.
pushing the vendors. I think I'd rather have the plan develop what I look for from a vendor.
Okay. All right.
But if you get a good vendor, by all means, you can give a card or.
Okay. That takes us to new business, November 2018 bills.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Mahone?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Abstain?
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
And that brings us to the treasurer's bond.
Yes, that is Melissa. Melissa got a recommendation from our auditors that we needed to up our treasurer's bond, so I'll let you talk to that.
So every year we have to renew our treasurer's bond. Typically, we do this consent agenda, August, September timeframe. We just went through our financial audit, and one of the findings that we're going to have on there is that our treasurer's bond was not enough last year. It has to typically be 25% of your overall cash and investments. In October, 1 month, we were just over that. So they recommended that we move, our treasurer's bond was at 8 million. They recommended that we moved it to 10. So I'm just bringing forward, and I wanted to do it here for you guys to kind of get the background to it. And so when you see when the auditors do their report in December, that this is going to be on there, but we've already brought it to you and taken care of it. So this is just, it's going to be an additional $1,700 this year, and then next year when we renew it, it'll be $8,500 for that renewal. Any questions on that?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Kelly.
Mr. Mahone?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Haverly?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxey?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. That brings us to the levy.
This continues to be the Melissa show. I know Melissa brought the levy to the last business meeting. And I think we added a 4th option. And this was based off an opportunity coming from the state that Melissa just wanted to give a little background and update on and
Yep.
make a recommendation and let some discussion be had on the levy.
So just a basic timeline of the levy. October 30th was our business services committee. That was the first time that I presented the levy out to everybody. November 13th, which is today, is our school board. It's our first hearing on the levy. So you guys are just, it's more for informational purposes here tonight. So you can hear it, ask questions, get more information. December 18th is going to be another our school board meeting. We are going to have a public hearing on the tax levy. Typically, by law, you only have to have a public hearing if it's over 5% of what you levied the previous year, we talked at the business committee meeting that for transparency's sake, let's just do it anyway. So we are going to have that tax levy hearing on December 18th, and then we have to adopt the levy that night. It has to be read to the county clerk by December 21st, so by statute that has to happen. Revenue to the school district, so why do we levy? What's the importance of this? In Illinois, we have three ways that we get revenue. Local, which is the property taxes, so that's why we levy. We have 75% of our income and our revenue comes from these property taxes that we levy. State is about, can't see up here. State is about 17.9, 18%. One of the things that was questioned in the business services meeting was how much new state money we got this year, and it was about $387,000 that we got this year in new state revenue. And then the last piece of that pie is the federal. Those are our grants, our special ed grants, our ELL grants, that kind of thing. Another conversation that we had is these are our fund balances in all of our 9 fund codes that we have. You can kind of, I won't read them all down there, but these are kind of our surplus, you could say, or our savings for those, each of those codes there. So what is a tax levy? A tax levy is the amount of taxes that the school district is imposing on the people that live in our taxing area. Every year we go through this process to adopt the tax levy. Like I said, it makes up about 75% of our revenue. It's due on December 21st. Another important piece of the tax levy is, you'll hear this EAV, or equalized assessed valuation. So this is not known yet. The counties will say, here's our guess. This is what we think is going to happen, but until everything kind of falls into place after the levy is adopted, our job is to make the best prediction. Another thing that we don't know is how much new construction we're going to have. And so the EAV and the new construction are the two big pieces of the levy that impacts how much money we're going to get from our taxpayers. And so we kind of inflate our levy a little bit to make sure that we can get all of the money that is out there for us, and that we don't leave any money on the table. So as you can see, over the last few years, 2016, 17, and now this year, our EAV across the county has risen from 135 million to this year it's 154. So it's a good trend for the county to have the housing prices go up. Estimated new construction, last year there was not a lot going on, about 635,000. That potentially may change. We're seeing some movement and some subdivisions, so we'll kind of watch that and see what happens there. So our overall change is about 8.21%. The nice thing with when EAV goes up, tax rates go down. And so this is good news for our school district, as the housing goes up, our tax rates go down. So we'll kind of get to pass some of that along. This just kind of goes over how they figure out tax rates, and I'll get into that a little bit more in our different options. And then after you guys adopt the tax levy, I take it to the county clerk. The county clerk takes our rate code, and then they create the individual bills for the people. So I can say, like, this is a hypothetical what may happen to a $150,000 home, but there's so many variables on each housing bill. And so we're not actually saying this is, but the county clerk will do all of that from the levy that we give them. 2017 tax year, our extension without bonds was $9,030,906. The total bond extension is the $2.23 million. Extension without bonds is all of our money that's going into education fund, our orientation mobility fund, or operations and maintenance. I was a mission teacher, so it's like in the forever. Transportation. So that $9 million there, that's going into all of our working funds. That's what's paying for our teachers. That's what's paying for our buses. That's where that money's going. That $2.23 million, the second line, that's what's going to our bonds, that outstanding debt that we have, that automatically gets paid. And the counties know how much we owe, and they automatically say, you have to give this much money to that. And then that was our overall, $11 million was our overall extension last year. Another piece of the levy process, which is a big one, is the abatement of bonds. And you guys have spent a lot of time going through how we're going to abate bonds. The nice thing when you abate bonds is it's when we decide as a school district how we're going to reduce our requests for the tax money. So we can say we're going to give some money and we're going to pay off some of this debt that we have, and that lowers the tax rate for our our community. And so it's a nice kind of a compromise there. So 2017, the district decided to abate $935,000 worth of bonds. We have a restructuring plan already in place. Last year, we had $700,000 that was going to get abated, and the board decided to abate an additional $235,000 on top of that. This year, we are scheduled to abate $900,000. That was part of the plan that you guys already had in place. And then we're going to decide, or you guys have to decide, do we want to abate additional, or there are some options that I'll go through in a little bit. This is the new thing that I actually got about the week after our business meeting. Illinois has a property tax relief grant that they've introduced. This is the first year they've done this. It's new grant funding. It's providing school districts with high tax rates relative to other districts an opportunity to lower their tax burden. The grants are due January 7th of 2019. Eligible districts will be notified on January 31st, and then you can abate additional money. One of the things, the way that this works is they've given so much money, I think it's $50 million, to the abatement, or to this grant. And once they get all the applicants in at the end of January, they're gonna basically put them in order of need. And then once that $50 million is gone, then they're done. Right now, we're kind of in the middle of the pack in the state. So if everybody above us applies, we're probably not gonna get the funds. I don't know what other school districts are gonna do either. And so there is an opportunity that maybe people don't apply for it, and we could be potentially able to get it. So
Have you heard much about this at all through the business?
there was a lot
side?
of questions on how does this impact us long term? What does this do? One of the things that it does is if you do get any money through this grant, it becomes part of your evidence-based funding, and so you get it. It's just part of your package from the state. So it could increase that every year. There hasn't really been any don't do it because X, Y, and Z, but it's so new. It's only been maybe 2 weeks that it's kind of been out. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
still
what I was
kind of,
asking, like, because this was
unraveling.
just so fresh.
Yeah.
So, just to clarify,
Yeah.
if we were to win this grant, it's not just a one-time payout.
Right, because it gets, they pay it to us one time, and then the next year, it's part of our evidence-based funding money. So we would get that next year. We wouldn't have to use it for the abatement of taxes, but it would be part of, from what I understand, it would be part of that state evidence-based money that we get every year. So it really could be an excellent opportunity to get some more state funding, but we know how state funding goes too, right? That kind of changes, but if you're gonna abate bonds already, it's a nice way to get some of that money back to the taxpayers. Our total amount that we could be awarded is the $1.277 million. So that's kind of the cap that they said, and we're doing this big spreadsheet, that that's the most that we could get through that grant. So some options. Any questions before I go into options? Option one for the levy is that we could levy the CPI. CPI is that consumer price index, and so it's kind of the cost of living. So every year they raise our levy amount, the amount that we can get basically by the cost of living, which this year is 2.1%, like automatically. So we could levy that 2.1 and get that additional money. We could levy money for the EAB, new construction. We could abate our bonds at that previously amount of the $900,000. And our estimated levy rate would be about 7.5213%. So if I had a $150,000 house last year and my house still is $150,000 this year, that could be about a $245 decrease for the year for that taxpayer for this option. The second option is that we could levy the CPI, that 2.1%. We could levy additional money for the increase. We could abate our bonds at the $900,000, which we already decided that you guys decided we wanted to do. We could abate an additional amount of the CPI, which you guys did last year, of a $200,000. And the estimated tax rate there would be 7.3917%, and that's about a $300 savings on a $150,000 home from last year to this year, if nothing else has changed. Option three is that we don't levy the CPI, so that some places do this where they don't levy that CPI, they don't levy that automatic increase. We still abate our bonds at $900,000. The tax rate is about 7.3979%. Still, it's about $300 savings for a home. Though I I discourage this option only because when you don't levy a CPI increase, you leave money on the table and you can never get that back. And so next year, we'll start at the amount that we lost, that 200,000, and we'll never get that 200,000 back every year as it goes on. So it does decrease the tax rate a little bit, but I don't think it's significant enough to not levy that CPI. And then our fourth option, this is the new option that wasn't at the business services meeting, was that we levy the CPI, we levy the additional money for the construction and EV, we abate our bonds at that 900,000 that we had potentially, that we talked about doing before, and that we apply for that tax relief grant in January. If we get additional money, then we can abate up to 327,000, which would put us at the cap for that grant. And if we don't get the grant, then we just stay at that $900,000 abatement, as we had planned before. So this option can give us the opportunity to abate more money if we get the grant, but then if we don't get the grant, then we would just stay at the 900,000. The tax rate, if we don't get the grant, 7.5213. If we did get the grant at the full amount, it could be as low as 7.3094%. I feel like this is a really great option just because we're abating the 900,000, which we thought, but then we're also kind of taking advantage of potentially a grant thing that we could get to. So it's kind of.
And is that grant an onerous process, or is it a relatively?
No, it's relatively easy because it's going by need, and they already have all the districts laid out by need, and so basically I think they're just going to put it in order. It's basically your district name and that you're intending to file for.
And did you intend it?
Are there any questions or anything I can further explain?
So option 4 is pretty much like option 1 with the addition of the
The grant. Yeah.
money for
Yeah.
more abatement.
And we have until, I believe, March timeframe to abate. So if you guys said to me, let's do the 900,000, let's, just abate 900,000 now, and we did not get the grant, we could always meet again and say, you know what, we really want to abate more, and we can do some more before that March, April cutoff. So, we don't have to abate everything right now. We do have an option at the beginning of the year to do some more too, if we wanted to. So there's some.
With kind of a wait and see from the state?
There's some options there, yeah.
You said the grant, we know about the grant by the end of January?
Yeah, January 31st, they said they would let districts know because they have to give us time to put all, the abatement process through the board and all that. So yeah, at the end of January, we would know.
Any further questions?
One of the things we talked about at the business services meeting is, and I think, so for me, this
Yeah.
decision goes back to what we decided on the bus purchase earlier in the meeting. And the slight nuance that I would take on it is that my initial thing in looking at this is that I would be for doing the abatement and abating, I think is it option 2?
Yeah, the additional 200,000.
The additional
CPI.
200,000 unless we had something to spend the money on that we felt was worthwhile. And so for me, my slight nuance would be is that I would, I guess, now go for option 4 with the understanding that the $200,000 that we're not assessing in taxes like we did last year would go towards funding the bus purchase. I know it's a slight nuance in there, but for me, that's kind of how I play it out in my mind, is that I think the bus purchases are a need. We've talked about it. It's not something we're budgeted for, and that's how I would like to see the $200,000 used in here. And great if we get the grant money. I think it seems hard to believe that we're not at the top of that list, but.
I know, but yeah.
But anyway, that's in my way of thinking of how option 4 plays out for me, so.
And we had talked about the business committee meeting, do we, at 200,000, are you saving it for a rainy day, or is there a need that we have, and after hearing the curriculum audit too, it's like, there's needs, but like you said, the transportation needs, all that kind of stuff, and so there's, I think depending on who you talk to, you can figure out, but.
Ed, did you have any further thoughts, or anybody who attended the business services meeting? I'm sorry I wasn't able to attend.
Tom read my mind.
Okay.
So I'm not, for me, obviously, I'll just put it in a motion and move to approve option 4.
Okay.
I'll second.
Are we looking for that action today?
I think
Or are we
right
gonna
now,
wait?
I think we do a hearing and then we officially vote on it next time, so.
Yeah,
but
so
it
I
sounds
will-
like the board's,
Yeah, option 4. I will
Leaning
bring
towards that.
paperwork for option 4 to the board hearing. And then we'll do the official.
In December?
Yeah.
Okay.
because we've got some timelines we've got to meet with postings and stuff like that too, so that gives us direction.
You want to poll everybody for their vote, so you know exactly where you stand, or?
We could do that, yeah. It's a good point.
You got a motion on the floor, and we'll take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that we know what we need to do in December, so these guys don't go through the process of pulling paperwork and doing resolutions and
Right.
have somebody change their mind.
I like it.
We have a motion on the floor. Does anybody have a second?
I seconded it.
Okay. Any discussion?
Specifically, what are we approving by voting? I think this is non-actionable then. Right?
It's
just-
more like that, giving us direction that we'd be looking at kind of posting and being transparent with option 4 for the levy hearing in December.
With this motion and the wording, are we technically approving option 4 and everybody's going
We'll be re-voted on it.
We
so-
got to re-vote on it again in
Okay.
December. This is just kind of giving us direction of what to post.
Is that clear, Clark?
Yep, that helps.
Good.
Do you want us to do a roll call?
I do.
Okay.
Just because it's money.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Or, excuse me, roll call.
Roll call, yes.
I'm so sorry.
Roll call, yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Hazelworth?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Kinzer?
Yes.
Mrs. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Thank you.
And before we move on, I'd like to say to Melissa, again, thank you. That was exceedingly clear and easy to follow, and I really appreciate that. Even maybe taking a step back for some people and defining terms, and that was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom and I thanked her at the business services meeting, so we don't want to blow her up.
I'm sure I'll hear.
If it helps it keep coming, I'm going to go ahead and say it. All right, that brings us to preschool transportation fees.
Yes, this was a topic requested by Mr. Mulholland. What I did is I provide you guys with information. We have been, and it's not really preschool transportation fee, it's really for transportation fees for students that live inside, I think it's 1.5 miles of school districts and stuff like that, and if a parent wants to optionally pay the district so that their child can ride the bus, it's an option we provide with the parents. This was voted on back in 2011 and 2012, and it's been in place ever since. And I'll kind of let Mr. Mulholland lead in more if there's more. I provided you guys with the documentation and the rationale of what they used back in 2011 and 2012 when this was moved forward.
So we were presented, or, I was presented with an email from a parent who was talking about the bus transportation service that had been provided for preschool, at which point we realized that there was a fee being charged to students that we had not approved. Right, the wording of the resolution that was approved back in 2011 specifically says this was for the 11-12 school year, and it has never been approved since. And we got into discussions about self-funding the pre-K program. It was never presented to us that we were charging a fee for kids who needed to test low enough to be in a program. So for me, it's more about, I guess, the transparency part of it. I had absolutely no idea that we were in the process of charging parents for transportation. As crazy as it sounds, and I asked Melissa today, we're charging $400. What do we get for a kid for it on the claim? And she said $275. That makes it even more ridiculous that kids that we could be putting on the claim and getting more reimbursement for, by charging them, we essentially take those kids off the claim. So, I guess what I'd like to see us do in the short term is refund the fees that the pre-K parents charge, put those kids back on the claim, recoup our costs, and then decide what we want to do going forward with that whole program. But just felt like we haven't provided the service. The parent indicated that, for 3 weeks, their kids had been late to school every day for 3 weeks. It's only a 2.5-hour program. You're an hour late for a program, what's the point? So, without getting into pointing fingers at anybody, I just feel like this is something we need to take a step back from and figure out what it is that we want to do here. The other part of it is that safety waivers for a lot of these kids that are paying for bus service now. When this sham of a committee was set up, Dr. Ball already knew what he wanted for the vote. He just stacked the deck and just rammed it through to a board that had no idea what was coming. So, safety waivers exist for all of the subdivisions that we have in the school district. All of those kids could be on a claim. More importantly, the transportation and logistics nightmare that Heather and Allison deal with every day would be gone. You don't have parents need to bring your kids to school anymore. So I think that's part of a much bigger discussion that needs to take place here before next school year. I'm just trying to look at this fairly and not pointing fingers at anybody. People are just doing what had been done. I get that. I just feel like we need to take a step back and just do what's right by this set of parents. Sounds like Melissa has worked really hard to try and fix the problem. By the end of the school year, we'll know if it's really fixed or not, and then we can go forward. Because the craziest part about this is that I'm 100% sure that, and even Mr. Quat indicated at the business service meeting, that transportation was paid for by the preschool up until a certain point. So, without getting into too many specifics about whether that was done right or not, there's a whole other reason we should never have been charging those kids to start with.
So your look right now is just the pre-K side of it? Okay.
The rest of it, you'd be opening a can of worms.
And then review the rest of it for the next school. Do you know how many kids?
We're obligated to approve all fees every year anyway.
Right.
How this never got to us in our 4 years here it's nobody's fault. It's just there's people doing what had been done. But
There is.
Sorry to catch you off guard.
No, there's 30 kids in the morning preschool, and there's 30 kids in the afternoon. So there's a big teenage class.
And it's an at-risk program as well.
It's a blended special
Blended.
education at-risk program.
so all 60 of those kids were charged.
No. Any child with an IEP that's written in the IEP gets free transportation, but they pay registration fees to the district. And then any child that was in our at-risk program, if they wanted transportation, then they paid for transportation, but did not pay for registration fees. So that was set up before, and part of the registration fee thing was because of the grant. You could not charge registration fees because of the grant. Transportation maintenance. So we have 8 in the morning, I think 8 or 9 in the afternoon that are paid for transportation. But we have kids that ride who have special education plans that get transportation.
Any thoughts on this, Mike? How you'd like to best handle
No,
this?
I understand where Ed's coming from, and like I said, it's one of those things that's just been in place.
I said I'm not involved. I told Melissa on the phone today, and I'm not interested in fingerprinting. And people were just doing what had been done. It had been past practice, and once it became apparent that this is something that should have been in front of us to start with, it's, okay, now how we want to deal with it. I just feel like the best way to deal with it in the short term, refund those parents that are getting charged, and then we can have discussions later on about the safety waivers and the 1.5 and all the other things about what we want to do going forward.
My only question, concern is, do we want to open up other fields of transportation? My fear is with the shortage of drivers and having enough space, but if that's the direction you guys want me to take, then I will.
Say that again, Melissa.
If we want to, because there's some parents that transport their children to preschool, by refunding the parents that have paid, do we want to open up all preschoolers can ride for free? And then I'm just worried about the impact on bus limit, star seats, drivers, having enough people for those routes. So I'll take whatever direction. If you want me to open up to all preschool parents, we'll make it work. I just need to know kind of what to do with that instance.
Would it be reasonable to maybe pull together some numbers and crunch some of those bus numbers and present this again in December?
Because I could survey parents and say, if transportation is provided to you, would you like it? And so we can get an idea of how many people they actually take advantage of preschool transportation, and then I can come to you and say, this is not going to work this year, or we could make this work, and so I can do that, and that would be
My understanding is one of the solutions is that we blend some preschool and special ed kids together, right?
on the bus routes.
Yeah, for the pre-K.
Yes, they are already on the same routes together. That's correct. You can't fit as many little people on the buses just because they have to be in the 5-point harnesses, and so that they take up a little bit more room, but I can see how many people can fit on those
When she
buses.
says 5-point harness, think car seats.
It's a car seat.
I just like the
Sorry.
fact that she called them little people. I thought it was sweet.
So I can get that information. Is there anything else that you guys would think is helpful to make a decision or information?
Ed, is that reasonable, or would you still like tonight for us to discuss
No.
reimbursing? Okay.
This is a discussion,
Okay.
no recommendation
Right.
coming forward.
Okay. But I will wait to issue, we did reimburse parents the first quarter because what was happening was that we had drivers ill and we were breaking up the preschool route to get all the other kids to school, and so those kids were late. So, and it did happen. So we did reimburse the first quarter. So I will wait to reimburse the rest of it until December when we have more information, if that's okay with everybody. And I'll survey parents and see.
And then we worked on options to
Yes, and we
to
have-
alleviate that issue.
Yes. We have a few
Moving
options
forward.
going right now.
So that
alleviate
everybody's getting on time.
having to touch preschool and to kind of some contingency plans on if we have drivers sick, what can we do instead? So but that's in the works right now.
And thank you to the bus drivers for
Yes,
that,
thank
because
you.
they were
Yeah, the bus drivers have been
very helpful with that.
So I would guess, going forward, we probably need some decisions in place before preschool registration gets underway.
Yeah, and we also wanted to talk about what it would look like, because from our understanding from the state, with the new governor, we're not sure where this goes next, but that the preschool again would be at our expense. So if we're going to do it, how do we want to do preschool? If we're running it, we'll run it the way we want to. So this is a good chance to open some of that stuff as well. Because it's some of those mandates now from the grant, we get to choose how we want to do it.
So we'll discuss this further in December. And in the meantime, if anybody wanted to contact you for maybe further explanation.
Yeah, further explanation. I'd kind of like
If they
to even
have-
know some more of those, what did you call it, those waivers, or those,
All you have to do is call District 2 in Dixon, and they'll send you everything that's on file with them.
because we always, if you could reimburse, why didn't we do it? I mean, that was some of my previous, those were some of our previous concepts, was if you're going to get reimbursed, why won't you get reimbursed?
They have to be here in the file. as
Okay.
well.
Because I'd like to know more on that, actually.
I mean, if somebody's destroyed them, they wouldn't have access to destroying them in District 2.
So we were always trying to maximize our reimbursement.
And do you know, were you part of it when those were created?
My name's on the document, but no, I wasn't.
Well, my question is like, where the fee comes from? Was it like gas prices were higher, so they were, more expensive?
So
My children's district does $1 a day. So if you want to ride the bus and you're not like on that bus, you pay $1 a day unless other kids move in and then you're bumped because you're essentially an rider. So it's like $176 you pay a year to ride as long as you can see. So I was wondering like $370.
It was a document that was prepared to show a board that we were gonna fill a budget gap, but they never came close to it.
All right. Next on the agenda, streaming meetings.
Last two items were both requests for board members, and I believe Mr. Kinzer wanted to just have a discussion regarding streaming meetings. We currently stream our board meetings. I know you and I have talked about even doing committee meetings for the transparency side of things, but I think Tom just wanted to have a little discussion. So was there anything you wanted to share with streaming meetings, Mr.
I think the only thing that, that I was going to mention on it is, I'm all with the transparency part. I thought that, decisions to either stream or not stream or things like that should be a consensus of the entire board.
And I'm sorry, Tom, I did just ask for that, not even thinking to put it on the agenda or anything
And
like that.
the second part of it is, I think, especially, I was thinking of it even with regards to this meeting, but definitely if we expand it, is I would like to see local control of the starting, stopping, video and things like that. And it has to do with a privacy thing for not only the board members, but the audience, that when we go into executive session and things like that, that it just, there ought to be a way to do that. And so that would be my second part to the board, that if we are going to do something like that and go forward with it, that it, ideally, if, like Kelly could do it and things like that, or it could be offloaded, is that, that be done. So that was my
And I've
reason
got
for bringing it up.
Jerry looking into some options of what could be done for that too, if that's the desire of the board.
And with my teaching schedule changing and me having to miss so many meetings and committee meetings, I thought it would be useful if we streamed committee meetings. I wasn't sure if there was a reason why we did or didn't. And I also know it's been a point of frustration for you a few times where we begin to rehash things here that you feel have already been hashed at committee. But if you didn't attend those, you might not have heard that hashing. But if they were videos, you could go back and watch the video and you could hear all the conversation exactly as that was said. So that was two of my thoughts for us to begin streaming these and committee meetings, although I think it's a great idea, Tom, that you have it. Maybe if we could locally control that, because Jerry is somewhere remotely doing this?
Yes.
In his pajamas or something like that?
Yes. I don't want that visual, but no, I'm just kidding.
But you're right, in watching a number of the videos, there you can hear murmurings out there sometimes when nothing's really happening, and it does seem like there should be maybe a mute button that everybody can see that sure they're still videoing, but the mute button is on because this isn't a time that, although that might be something for us to look into. Might there be some regulation about having video casts and not having audio on at all times? We might want to look into that also.
Yeah, well, my thought is just the whole transparency and the professional side of the business meeting, keeping it as professional as you can. So it's a professional business meeting or professional board meeting.
So I guess, would you like to
We're looking at
just do a voice vote?
Yeah, I guess if the consensus of the board is okay, we're okay with the committees. I'll work with Jerry and we'll find something so that Jerry doesn't have to stream everything and he maybe can get some life back, but maybe work on something that's easy for us to manage.
So we're looking at streaming
At a meeting.
all the committee meetings?
The board committee meetings.
Okay.
as
After we look
well as
into
the
whether or
board
not
meeting.
Jerry can give up control, or if it's possible that somebody here could have control.
And I guess, yeah, I just look for direction from the board to move that way if they're comfortable with. And I can bring something back for official decision.
Is everybody all in favor of at least investigating this, not necessarily committing to it, but investigating it? Can we hear an aye?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we will begin to look into the possibility of streaming. Find out all the considerations there within. And then transparent finances.
That one's you.
Okay, I'm not sure if everybody read the article that I was given, that I asked Mike to share with everyone, but there was a quote in the very center that got me thinking. School board members should insist that a district's finances be as transparent as possible, and not at all that I don't think that ours are. But every district should publish on its website information about budgets, tax levies, capital expenditures, and employee compensation. And it just got me thinking that it seems like it would be easy enough for us to have that accessible, and if not for the public, even for us, as a reminder of where we are and what our numbers are. So I thought I would open up that to discussion to folks. I didn't think that that seemed an unreasonable thing when I read it. I thought maybe that's something, my initial thought was that maybe we would send this out as sort of an academic/budget newsletter, but then I thought if at least it's on the website and everybody had easy access to that information.
So compensation reports are all on our website. Budget, we talked about even just having a print copy of budget just available always in the office at all times, which I've been in part of a district. I don't have any problem with that. You know, there's always that process of notifying and hearings and everything else that, you know, you legally follow.
Yeah, and on the budget, or on the business services website, on our Boone, our budget's on there. There's
Oh, yeah.
a tab that says, information required to be posted, and the county's gonna pull it up. And I can put whatever you guys want on there, and I can add to the board agenda every month, anything that you guys want. If you want more information on accounts expended or revenue or whatever, I could pull whatever you guys think would be helpful for you guys to know I can do. So let me know, but yeah, here's all of our staff compensation reports. All of our teacher contracts are on there. On the front page is our budget. But also, once we get our annual AFR, annual financial report, that is on there as well. So the information is there, but if there's a different format or different way or anything that you want.
Do we ever publish in a more user-friendly form the results of the testing, our academic status, and some much easier to
School report cards, and probably the big
That
thing
would be
that's
the-
everybody's got the school report card. I think we have those. Gosh, remind me to make sure that that's accessible for Jerry. The school report card is the big thing that's reported there.
the levy information also, as I was looking through that, I thought this is something that I think the average Joe, I know they could go into our agenda, but even when we've talked about getting information out to parents and what's working and what isn't, every time I hear, well, it's out there for them to go get, I always think it would be easier if we were sort of pushing it towards them and they had to just hit delete, then we could say it was sent, you didn't have to come looking for it, it was sort of sent.
And I can put the levy presentation out here prior to the board, the levy today, so people want to look at the levy hearing, they can have access to it.
Is this something perhaps we could talk
Well-
with business services and about what we'd like to see?
I'm open to ideas, what you want.
Okay.
Usually every fall in November, usually one in February or March, I'll do those center sections of the shopper that go home to every person in the district. And there's usually a business piece, there's usually what's going on in the schools, there's something about activities that have gone on. So I'm due for one of those. If you have, I'd take ideas if there's things that you want communicated. I know through the Chamber of Commerce, we talked about how we've worked on abating some of our bonds. We've talked about lowering tax rates. Those things, those are all good messages to get out.
Maybe best to done through business services if we're looking for anything in particular. If anybody has any ideas,
Actually,
or maybe it would
It
not
could be
go any
business
further.
services. I'd even take ideas from people to just expand. I'm always looking for topics to get out there. I hit my principals frequently about
And I've
good
just been
things to
giving
share.
you guys what you've always had, and so it's not that I'm not open to other stuff, so if you have a desire for something different, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to see if I can accommodate that, but I'm just kind of following suit right now while I'm getting my feet wet, so,
Sure.
yeah, I'm open to suggestions if you have others.
Sure. And again, nothing in particular led to this that I felt we were falling short in any way, shape, or form, but when I read that line, I thought it might behoove us to push that information out or put it right smack center, not only curricular, but financial information. But I can talk with Melissa about what I'm talking about more specifically, and we can discuss that at another time, since it's sort of a nebulous discussion at this point in time.
But yeah, no, any of the business topics, any of the curriculum topics, we hit any of those things. Policy's not usually a good read, but
All right, next on the agenda
Sorry,
is, did anybody have any other thoughts on that issue along those lines? Anything to add?
I think as much as you can encourage the consumption of information and promote that, especially with a friendly face, things from the superintendent, things from the board president, there's merit to it.
Not in 30-page spreadsheets. I'm wondering if those
Yeah.
budgets are the
That's
30
convincing.
pages of spreadsheets.
Well,
I'm the only one that enjoys
much
that.
of what's public facing out of our meetings lacks the context. So there isn't the anecdotal description to go along with the presentation. So even if you tried to consume after the fact that material, it would be very hard to do. So if there were numbers in there, if there was data in there that was worth promoting and pushing forward, I think that can be filtered a different.
Video messages from,
Yeah.
a well-spoken board member such as yourself, maybe, something like that.
Nothing for closing.
Nothing for closing?
Not that I have,
All right.
unless the board has
No.
something.
Does anybody have anything for executive session? All right. I thought we were going to even wait a little longer.
He's going to save you.
I don't have to read that, too. All right. Any other announcements or information? I know I had one, Kelly, I saw some forms in here about you would like us to sort of pre-request any funding for the conference, and then we submit a sort of post-request of expenses, yes?
The post has to go.
Okay. Okay. Do you want us, I thought there were two. One is
And those are.
pre-approval? And everybody has a good deal of information about the conference in here, just as a reminder. And then do we have a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else? Go ahead, Tom.
Make the motion that we,
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in? Yeah, all in favor? Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, have a good evening, folks.
Thank you, guys.